Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast. John here, joined once again by the main man himself, Michael. Michael, how are you doing, dude?
We're doing good on some fronts. Maybe not so good on some other fronts, but we're
Oh,
fine.
yeah. Well, I would say I think we know what the pain point of Philadelphia sports fandom is right now.
Yes.
The major pain point. We'll talk about that's going to close the show,
Yeah.
like, but there is other events going on that are
Yes.
definitely worth
They're
talking.
fun.
So, dude, how about these playoffs we have in the NHL and the NBA? Like,
Yeah, this is the first time I'd say in a handful of years for sure, that the first rounds in particular of both the NHL and the NBA at the same time have been pretty damn entertaining. The NHL has its pretty consistent first rounds, usually pretty decent throughout the last handful of years. But the NBA has certainly struggled with multiple series in each conference being entertaining in the first round, and it's not even necessarily like a fault of anything. It's just a lot of the times you get top heavy conferences, and that just is what it is. And on paper, especially in the East, it looked like it was kind of top heavy, but you know, both conferences, you're getting pretty damn good games here in the first round. Like even, the Cavs seat that are 2-0, those games have been pretty solid. Oklahoma City, Memphis, outside of the first two games, it looked like we were on our way to a third blowout, except, the Grizzlies getting the game back, but the Thunder make a 30-point comeback and win the game. Rockets Warriors have been, punch counter punch. Nuggets Clippers has been pretty entertaining to watch. Pistons Knicks has been a good series. The Magic stole a good one yesterday. Like it's just you're getting good games throughout the first round. To Lakers Timberwolves has been fantastic. It's it's a good time for those sports to be doing well for themselves for sure. And the NBA especially really needed something to kind of help boost themselves back up into some positive talks. And the way that this first round has started off is definitely doing that for them.
yeah, I think the NBA has a lot of good storylines in the playoffs. Like the Clippers, you have like the resurrection of Kawhi Leonard. He's
Ah,
finally
hopeful, man.
close to this is the closest he's looked to being healthy since he was a Toronto Raptor.
Yeah, probably.
And shout out to Kawhi Surgeon because he's apparently the one that did Embiid's knee surgery he recently
Mhm.
got.
Listen,
Uh,
I'd be lying if I said Kawhi's performances haven't been giving me some hope. So, um,
um,
but it's nice to see James Harden's playing well as well. It's just good. It's good basketball. The games are good, entertaining. Doc Rivers is stinking it up, which is good. The Celtics
yeah, it's funny.
wrestling.
Like,
The Celtics and Knicks both wrestling around with the Pistons and Magic is good, even if they're probably going to win the series in 5 or 6 games. As long as it gives them some problems, that's good, and it's good for the league. The league, as much as you know, they want the Celtics to advance and the Knicks to advance, and they probably will to meet up in the second round. What I don't think the league wants to happen is for the Celtics to sweep or win in five and average margin of victory be like 20 plus points. And they don't want the Knicks to roll. Like they're happy that you're getting these close games and they're stealing games and stuff. So it's been good.
right, and I also think too, like, it's like I don't know. I feel like you're getting like because the NBA needs to find new players to promote outside of LeBron because LeBron's near the end of his career. Same thing with like KD.
Hmm.
Um, Also, and like you got like Steph Curry trying to gun for his fifth ring. You know,
Hmm.
you have like there's like a lot of good stories. Like I feel like each team kind of has like its own like little story going on. Which is good.
Yeah.
which I think is why their ratings are up significantly over like last year, right? Now on the flip
Yeah.
side, Michael, if we go to hockey, their ratings are way down, but like it's not due to the quality of play. I think it's because
No, the games have been good. The Turner in particular, TNT and ESPN too. It just those broadcasts blow for the most part. Like not only it's obviously you don't have Mike Emmerich, like you don't have a real voice of the NHL playoffs anymore, but the broadcasts themselves stink. And the NBA and even Major League Baseball has this problem with TNT is like drowning out the crowd noise so we can hear the announcers. And like I'm sorry, but and part of what makes those playoffs, especially the NHL playoffs, so great is when there is a big goal scored and the crowd is so loud that you do barely hear the announcer and the goal horn is loud and it really immerses you. It makes you feel like you're there. I get it. You pay these announcers a lot of money and you want them to be heard when they speak or whatever. Like, I guess that's the only thing that logically makes sense because if you were to poll fans and say, oh, would you rather hear whoever's on ice or whatever giving their analysis on the replay of that goal, or would you rather be hearing the crowd in the stadium feel like it's shaking and you're in there? And it's like it's so clearly the latter that it's ridiculous that we're even dealing with this. Like I was watching, what was it, Kings Oil? First of all the games last night were really, really good. But Kings Oilers, the Oilers score and then the Kings scored like 10 seconds later, like immediately. It was in Edmonton, and the announcer goes, "This place goes from shaking to you can hear a pin drop." And it's like the whole time I felt like I could hear a pin drop because of how you're making it sound like on TV. And I think that really takes away from it. Like if someone wants to watch get into the NHL and start by watching a playoff game, when you're watching and a goal scored and it feels boring, there's no, like, it's just super loud, crowd noises or whatever, you're gonna be like, "Do the fans even care?" You're gonna think it's kinda boring, like, I don't know.
yeah, like I don't know, like I remember watching like the Champions League, like soccer,
Yeah,
like that's like the big like playoff, like that's like their version of
yeah,
like the NFL playoffs, I suppose, right? Um, like the announcers don't yap the entire time, and you could hear the crowd, so
mhm.
they try to immerse you like you're there, basically.
Yeah, that's totally just part of the appeal, I don't know, like, you go watch best hockey playoff moments, and a lot of the ones you see are from, like, the late '90s through, like, the mid 2010s, even towards the end 2010s, because they kinda had the perfect sauce of good announcers, good quality of play, and good crowd noise that was popping when
Yeah.
they would
Well, do you
score.
ever notice now? Do you ever notice if you watch broadcasts from like or like replays of
Mhm,
like highlights from like the 2000s and like the 2010s? So like you watched when the Phillies won the World Series in '08.
mhm.
Like a lot of people would complain that like Joe Buck was like, oh, he sounds like he hates the Phillies. I don't think that was one, I don't think that's true, but two, it's like he's not trying to talk, like the announcer's not trying to make the moment about him. It's like this is like the team that's on the field's moment. So it's
Yeah,
like in other
there's that
words,
perfect balance.
like I feel like now it's like they're trying to, it's like, oh, like we need like the announcer to say something kooky or like get really hyped up so it like trends, but like or
Yeah.
something. I don't
I
know.
think my favorite calls, and I'll say this, I think Fox gets it right because they don't drown out crowd noise. Like you think back to the 2022 Phillies playoff run, and it was like Joe Davis, very excitable calls, but then he could let it breathe because it was just so damn loud, and it was great how loud you hear it. But then go back to 2023, watching the series against the Braves, and you see how TNT or TBS, whatever channel, TBS was totally drowning out the crowd noise. Like the Castellanos home run against Atlanta, that place was shaking. But you rewatch the highlights now, and you can totally tell that they just lower the crowd volume a little bit so we can hear the announcer, and it's like, I don't wanna hear Brian Anderson's call, like, that much louder than the crowd noise. I want it to be, like, neck and neck where you can barely hear the announcer getting out his voice because the crowd is engulfing it, and I want that same thing to go in hockey because that's when the things are great. Like, I wanted to hear, like, he scores, and then as he's finishing the phrase, it's almost just drowning himself out because the crowd, and so that's how it makes things exciting, and the production of the hockey playoffs has just been so disappointing. Hell, there's been games, John, they're not sending the announcers to the cities. They're calling games remotely at times. Do you know how ridiculous that is? That in 2025, and where you have professional playoffs, that a game in Winnipeg is being announced from people that are in a studio in Atlanta? That's awful. That's truly just terrible. I don't know what it's budget reasons, you don't wanna send them up there, just straight up
Budget reasons
laziness.
just sounds
It's
like
just
stupid.
whatever reason you come up with is absurd because there's no reason that they just should not be at the stadium calling the game. Like,
Is it because they're Americans and they're afraid they're going to Canada, they're gonna get like harassed or
I
something?
mean, I don't even know if they're Americans. I'm sure one of them's Canadian working for TNT, and,
Well,
there
I mean,
was
well, no, I'm not even talking about the actual announcers. I mean, like the people that lay the wires, like the production crew, the people in the trailer that's
I mean,
outside the stadium.
that would be ridiculous,
Like,
honestly, and you look at, there was an ESPN broadcast for the Stars Avalanche game, and the entire game, the sound was ahead of the game. The picture was behind the sound. So the announcer is saying he scores, but the player didn't even shoot the puck yet. It was like a total like second between the announcer making a call and then the play happening. And it's like that is really inexcusable. I'm sorry. Like it's the playoffs. That needs to be nipped. And that went on the entire game. And that game went to overtime. And you have an overtime game winning goal that gets shown that gets shown after the announcer already said he scored. It's embarrassing. And that's a lot of the reason why Gary Bettman gets a lot of crap, commissioner of the NHL. It's stuff like this where you're not even trying to stand up for your sport. Hell, even Rob Manfred, who we all think blows at his job, is standing up for Major League Baseball when ESPN isn't talking about them and removing, nixing the contract before it ends to go find someone that's gonna more, nicely broadcast and talk about their game on their network.
Fox.
And Gary Bettman is having the literal playoffs be an embarrassment from a production standpoint, and nothing's really being done or talked about because of it. You're missing out. And listen, I understand
Michael,
ratings are going to be down.
you're gonna rant yourself out. We got to talk about the Phillies in
I
like an
know.
hour.
Listen, I understand that they're going to hurt themselves with ratings in a year that this is the first time ever in NHL history that the Penguins, Rangers, and Bruins have all failed to make the playoffs. Both New York teams are not in. Philadelphia's not in. Boston's not in. Pittsburgh's not in. I get it. That is Chicago's
Chicago's
not
not
in
in.
as another one. Detroit's not in as another like solid market as well, especially in hockey.
Yeah,
Those are
the original six,
markets, like lack of.
Well, I mean, you have the Canadian
The
representation.
Canadian teams are in there, the big Canadian, but you do not have.
I think that's a big reason why the ratings are down. I think because the Canadian fans are going to watch, right?
They always watch.
But
It
but it's
doesn't,
very but I think it's very like colloquial up in Canada. In other words, like Maple Leafs fans aren't going to watch like the Canadians play, right? It's
I
not.
mean, I don't know. I think they hate watch.
I'm sure they, but I, you know what? But I'm sure they probably, there might be some people that hate watch, but I think like it's not like in like the U.S. where like Dodgers Padres. Yeah, I want to watch that because it's going to be really good baseball.
I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know if I agree with that. I'd have to actually look at it. But when you look at like when the NHL's biggest American market in the playoffs is like LA, which is already like a questionable market to begin with in all sports, but especially in hockey. and the other biggest one being like Washington D.C. That's rough, man. Those are two rough American markets to be your best ones. You got both Florida teams, which those are good games and those fan bases care down there, especially in the playoffs. But you know, the East American teams are rough with DC, Tampa, uh, I guess Sunrise, Florida, Miami, you want to call it,
Well,
Raleigh, North
well,
Carolina.
yeah, I
Like
mean, dude,
that's
you
just
got
tough.
Fire. I mean, like
Dallas.
Flyers fans are more interested in the Calder Cup playoffs than they are the NHL playoffs from people I've spoken to.
Well, a lot of it too is there's not as much hate watching to do in the NHL as a Flyer fan. Who am I hate watching? Like I hate certain teams for certain reasons, but like in terms of genuine rivals that like the Capitals, I guess, is that the biggest Flyers rival in the playoffs right now?
Well, I probably,
Tampa, like
probably,
what,
like
both of those teams beat the Flyers in a playoff series a couple times, but it's like
they're not
it's
rivals.
the
Well,
Devils, the Devils. Sorry, I forgot I always forget exactly. I forget about the Devils, but the Devils are in there, and I hate watching against the Devils all the time. But it's still, that's Devils, Hurricanes, and the games are good, but they're just doing a bad job getting them out there and broadcasting it. It's a shame. But regardless, the playoffs, both leagues, has been pretty entertaining thus far.
I agree. So I think we should probably talk about what's probably stealing a lot of ratings this weekend
Yes.
is the NFL draft. So
Mhm.
Michael, um, let's just address the elephant in the room. Then we'll kind of go. I think we're going to kind of quickly go through the first round, talk about some of the most notable picks of the first round, some of the notable things that happened, and then we can talk about what the Eagles did because they picked near the end,
2
and then
picks. Yeah.
then we're gonna move over to the Phillies. But the biggest shock, I think, this weekend with the NFL draft is Shadur Sanders, who was projected to go like a month ago to go, top 10 in the draft, hasn't been picked yet. And
There's been 1, 2, 3, 4 other quarterbacks that have been drafted. Um,
no, five.
so
There's been
Shuck.
five. It's
Who's
Cam
the
Ward,
Cam
Jackson
Ward?
Dart, Tyler. How do you
Shuck?
say his name?
I think
Shuck.
it's Shuck. Yeah.
Tyler Shuck. Then
Oh,
you
yes,
Shuck,
Milrow too, and
Shuck,
Gabriel. Yeah,
Gabriel,
5
Milroy.
quarterbacks 5 quarterbacks been drafted ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And now listen, I'll say this. I don't think I never thought this was a great quarterback class. I don't think anybody disagreed with that, entering it, but it felt pretty definitive that Shedeur was, like, definitely the second best one, I would say, and perhaps had the highest floor out of any of them, being as accurate as a passer as he was in college. Um, you know, 80% completion or whatever, even if a lot of them are screens, he has a good floor of accuracy. The question was always like his ceiling, and he takes some bad sacks. How well is that going to translate? Whatever. But the floor was high enough that for the teams that needed a quarterback, he should not have gone far. Like he should not have gone too deep in the second round at like the latest. Probably should have been drafted within, I'd say, the first 50 picks, maybe. And, to see what some of the teams are doing to go get other quarterbacks in this draft, it really does feel ludicrous. And the reports out there that, he did not interview well and all this sort of stuff. And I just can't imagine how bad of an interview you had to have been. Like, how truly terrible of an interview that you had to have been that you, as a month ago top 10 projected pick, up leading up to the draft, like no later than maybe like 40 projected pick, are falling to day 3. It's really, really alarming, honestly.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, because like most, I think from what I read, was that a lot of people had a day two grade on him. Like he should probably,
Sure.
but we've seen quarterbacks that were like projected second rounders get picked
I mean, John, what do we have? 6
deep
in
in
the
the,
top 10 last year? Or top 12, whatever it
yeah, like
was?
Bo Nix probably should have been like a second round pick.
Yeah, and he's getting drafted what? 10th, 12th? What was
Right.
he?
And like
You know?
Michael Penix, like same thing, right?
Yes.
Same
Kenny
deal.
Pickett gets traded up for and drafted in the first round back in 2021 just to take a quarterback.
I mean,
We've
I
just
think there's a couple factors here in play that I think are very specific to him and
mhm,
not generalities. So for example, all those guys you just mentioned, like Bo Nix, we just mentioned Penix, Bo Nix, Kenny Pickett, their father, none of their fathers are former NFL Hall of Fame players who happen to coach a 1A program where they just had their number retired.
yeah, that was a little strange.
Like I think he wanted to retire Shadur's number, but I think he knew if he did it, there would be major outrage because Travis Hunter just won the Heisman, so he did both, which is
Right.
weird because normally when you retire a number, it's usually like one at a time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's that different in college, but
And then they mentioned like there's other Heisman Trophy winners from Colorado that don't have their numbers retired.
I actually did not know that.
Like Eric Bieniemy didn't have his number retired, or if he retired it, it wasn't like after he won the Heisman. It was like, which whatever.
Neither here nor there. Yeah.
That's neither here nor there. But I think the concern is if the team that drafts Shador has him start out as a backup, his father is going to be his father who besides being a coach is a big media personality
Mhm.
as well, is going to be like going on national television, being I guess being like the typical parent on like the typical like high school football parent where they're
And
just
wants their kid to play. Like, I I mean, at this point, you're not, are you drafting a quarterback on day 3 to be a starter? Like, I feel like we're so far past that at this point, unless the Steelers take him and they don't sign Rodgers. Like, it just
well
I
you read that like he had it like like him and Brady have like some Tom Brady have some sort of rapport,
yeah.
right? And the Raiders didn't pick him. Like, isn't that like a red? That's crazy.
It you
Like
don't,
Michael, the Raiders. I mean, like, listen, like, I think Geno Smith's a solid quarterback, but isn't he like 34, 35 years old? He's not the long term quarterback there.
no, he's only got a 3-year contract. You can probably get off of it after like a year or 2 if you wanted to, especially if Shador is gonna be that guy. And I think that's the sort of situation as someone like Shador really fits him, where you can kinda grow and develop him further past what he already has as a really good, accurate passer. And listen, if Geno's up there stinking it up and it's like he's unplayable, then you rock with Shador, and like the floor again, like we said, the floor is pretty high. It does feel absurd though. That's like it's not like no quarterbacks are being taken. We mentioned it. 5 quarterbacks being taken above him. And I understand Cam Ward, that was one that was always going to be happen. I even understood people spinning Jalen Milrow over Shador because it was, Jalen Milrow is a really, really good athlete, and there's enough tools that you can develop to maybe turn him into something, pairing him with, say, Brian Dable in a similar way to Josh Allen, like that sort of thing. Okay, I could buy that. Jackson Dart, it was like a little. It's like if you want to draft Jackson Dart, you might as well just draft Shador. I guess he's got a better running upside, like as a runner, but the passing game and like the recklessness with his body has like huge negatives in my part. Like, you see the big games that Jackson Dart has played in, he really shrinks down and he takes some brutal hits. We'll talk more about him with the Giants pick. It just You could do some mental gymnastics, but I guess you could land him to being taken as the 4th quarterback in the draft. I guess. But then you start getting to Tyler uh,
So,
Tyler Shuck from Louisville. to the New Orleans Saints. And now it's starting to be like, all right, what the hell is going on here? If we just to give a little bio on Tyler Shuck, he was the backup for get ready, Justin Herbert back at Oregon in 2019. There is a tweet of the Oregon football team saying, and Tyler Shuck is into the game. Justin Herbert exits 21 of 25 for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns and another. Like he was the mop up quarterback for Justin Herbert back in his like second to last year in college. Like Justin Herbert still had another year in college to go. That's or no, sorry, that was his last year in college. Disregard. Justin Herbert's last year in college. That kid was the backup. John, that was 6 years ago. It's 2025. This guy
And
is older
I'm
than
gonna
Trevor Lawrence.
I'm gonna have a really homer take here, Michael, and you're probably gonna agree with it when I bring it up. If you're the New Orleans Saints, why don't you just trade that pick you used for Tyler Shuck to the Eagles for Tanner McKee? Tanner McKee's younger. He's
You
actually
genuinely might as
played in
well.
the NFL.
Yeah, it's you literally might as well because Tyler Shuck. I mean, he's older than Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has been in the league for 4 years. Like,
Yeah,
what are we
he's
talking
actually
about?
he's older than Tanner McKee.
It's unbelievable. And you know, there's a couple nice plays that he makes where it's like, "Ooh, wow." But then you see, like, his combine throw where he's trying to, like, throw it from an off angle, and it lands, like, 6 yards in front of the receiver. There's a lot of bad viral turnovers that are going around now, and it's just there's no spin to me that you can rationally take him over Shador. That's just there's nothing. I'm sorry. Shador would have had to have quite literally hocked a loogie on the head coach's forehead for maybe that to be rational because this is absurd. And this is not to say Shador is some top end prospect, but this
Michael,
is ridiculous.
Darius Dice almost got into a physical altercation with Howie Roseman when he interviewed here, and he still got drafted in the second round.
Right. Right. And then Dylan Gabriel, where dude, Dylan Gabriel probably shouldn't even have been drafted at all. And like
Correct.
probably if he was, should have been drafted after guys like Kyle McCord and maybe Will Howard. And he's getting drafted ahead of Shador. Dylan Gabriel is a shorter, left-handed version and just kind of worse at everything as Shador Sanders. Like they're similar, play styles a little bit.
I
Gabriel
was gonna
runs a little
say
more.
he's like the Timu Tua.
Yeah, I guess. And that's, two is already pretty discount. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think it's
So,
not a good thing.
well, I think so. I kind of this is kind of my take on Shador. There's several factors, that are some are his fault, and then some that are completely not his fault. I do think racism definitely plays a part in it, Michael, because a lot
Yeah,
of these owners chime in on these quarterbacks they want to pick.
right.
So, like the Saints, for example, Tyler Shuck, you don't think like the Saints owner is like Gail Benson's like, oh my gosh, he reminds me like one of my grandsons, and let's draft him, and they see Shador, and they're like, ew, no, like,
Yeah. Yeah,
right,
no, for sure.
or
It's just
like I think another thing too is like you brought it up something like, I think I don't think some of the racist tweets you were sending like the whole Cam Ward doesn't wear jewelry and things like that. I'm like, that's absurd. Like what? Like that's like an absurd take to have because it's like you don't mean
sure.
to like you mean to tell me that like if Bo Nix wore like a gold chain, you're gonna be like, ew, we can't draft him because he's wearing a gold chain. Like that's
Well,
idiot.
listen, well,
That's
that's the point that they wouldn't
or if he
because,
did, they would be
you
like,
know,
oh, like who cares? Like I yeah, like,
the
I
thing
I
with
I
it
think
just
I think
feels like the owners had an agreement almost where it's like, all right, we're not taking him till day 3. Because that's what it feels like, honestly. Because some of the quarterbacks, especially the last
what
two.
if what if because this is in a kind of like you just said, like you bring up collusion and like embarrassment. What if you're Jeffrey Lurie, do you call up Goodell and be like, dude, this like, hey, keep the tush push. We'll take Shador and then we'll end this farce to save face.
Listen, maybe. we're not too far away from the Eagles signing Shador as like an undrafted rookie. Honestly, like we're getting there.
'Cause I
You
feel
know,
like here's the thing, like a lot of concerns about Shador. Like, here's the thing: if the Eagles were to draft Shador, the moment he's gonna, if he goes like, if Hurts throws a bad pick, and he starts going on like Twitter saying like, "Oh, Hurts should be benched and I should be the quarterback," he's gonna like he's gonna go to the CFL.
I just don't think.
I don't think he's that. I don't. I
I
think
don't think
like
he's
I
that
don't.
dumb. Like truly, I don't think he's stupid like that. Like that is a dumb thing to do, and I don't think he's doing that. Like I think you know, Dion preaches it to all of his players, especially to his kids, just confidence and like part of being confident is being a little bit cocky. I don't really know what to say about a lot of the guys that are the most confident players in the league. You kind of have to be a little bit of cocky. You got to talk a little bit of your shit. Like you have to really believe that you're that good in order to be constantly confident at all times. And Dion is the perfect example of that, especially at a position like cornerback, where it's very, you have to have some sort of attitude to play the position. Because if you don't, you'll just mope and be miserable. It's gonna be tough sledding out there. So, when if Shador wants to believe and is like super confident that he can come in this league and be good, like that's whatever. And if that's going to come off as like cocky and arrogant, and these owners really want their quarterbacks to be super humble and modest into themselves, or like, oh, look at Jalen Hurts or whatever, as like the bad
Look at
example.
Baker.
Exactly. Exactly. You're telling me Baker wasn't in those interviews, probably saying some of the same shit that Shador was? I find that I'm hard pressed to believe that Baker wasn't in those pre-draft interviews, like running his mouth, like I know I'm the best damn quarterback in this draft. Like I'm like, oh, I would love the confidence on this kid. Like that's love the moxie is how they like to call it with Baker.
Yeah, yeah, and like if you're like Cleveland, man, like weren't you being like, wow, we really screwed up getting rid of Baker? Like,
Hmm.
wouldn't that kind of be like your thought process? Like, if the Browns drafted Shador, it could have been like, like we're gonna have like basically like the opposite of the creep, like where the creep is very much like creepy, I guess.
Yeah.
We got someone who's very like excited. He's going to be like, because I think well, you just read all the tweets. It's like, oh, I want my like D. I think this is like the last point I want to make. I think Dion really Sanders, that is, hurt his stock by saying, I want my son to go to a competent team. Michael, there's like 20 incompetent teams in the NFL, at least.
Yeah, and there's not many competent ones that pick at the top of the draft.
Like, yeah, like I want my son to go to a competent team that's going to need a quarterback. All the competent teams, Michael, have a quarterback.
Yeah, like the most you can spin is what you want him to go to Pittsburgh, I guess. And like they have their arguments of incompetence. But I don't know. I'd be shocked, I guess, if he goes undrafted. But at this point, I guess anything could happen. I would have really been confident and placed some like stupid amount of money to say like he's not going to go day three, and here we are.
My
So
favorite
we will
tweet
be
about it,
seeing.
someone said was, "What rounds does Shador get taken in? Where Dion's calling some like rich Saudis to
Yeah, to start
start a
a new
rivalry."
arrival. Yeah,
It
yeah, I
was.
saw that.
I think I think that ultimately is the not the whole Saudi league thing, but like the whole thing is like it's like you're gonna have to deal with Dion being this like basically like it's almost like this is the comp. I'm trying to think. Like you don't remember like Eric Lindros's parents were extremely overbearing because they were his agent. Do you really want to have to deal with Dion trying to tell you how to run your football team? Like if the Eagles drafted Shador and if Dion's going to try to tell Nick Sirianni how to how to coach Shador or
Yeah,
how,
like but is Dion? My thing is I don't. Is Dion really going to take that to the NFL level? Like Dion is still the coach at
I mean,
Colorado.
I
It's
don't.
not like he's
I
done
mean, I
coaching.
don't think so. But I think like when you're on draft day, man, like we'll get to it when like we talk about the Baltimore Ravens because like I know we're not going to really talk much with the second and third round, but there is a player the Ravens took in the second round where you're thinking like the Ravens took a possible rapist in the second round, and you're trying to say Shadur has character issues.
Right. Amidst like the Justin Tucker thing too. You're already dealing with one player that's on the roster still that
Yeah, and
has all this
Rappaport
going
said like
against
he
them.
told the teams like what happened, and they said a lot of teams when he explained it, like he explained it, I guess with his agent, they were like basically like horrified, and they were like, "That's a horrible explanation."
Yeah, they
Like,
were like, that does not make me feel any better.
in
I
other words,
actually
he was
feel
like, "Oh, I've been
worse.
accused of rape, but they were just money diggers." Like it's like
It's like, dude,
I
that
guess like I don't know what he said, but it was like,
it's clearly yeah, I you
or
that's you're very right.
maybe he admitted that he did it. Like I've been
God
accused of
knows.
it, and like there was something
There's
happened.
something there. Like that's yeah, that's certainly a mess. But yeah, I don't think Dion like is Dion gonna be showing up to like mini camp and like while he has his own team, is he going to just roll up to whatever facility and think he can walk around like he's a I don't think he's doing that. I guess if they really get the
He would be
vibe that they think
fired
he
from his
is, but
Colorado job if he did that.
that's what exactly. So, I don't know, as long as he's employed as the head coach of Colorado, I don't think I'd be too worried about his involvement because realistically, what can he do during the season? Especially during the season, and then in the off season, like, college coaches are really around the clock because 'cause you're recruiting and stuff like that. So, I don't know, it's not gonna be like week 6 and Dion's knocking on the door of Kevin Stefanski's office, like, "What the hell are we doing playing Kenny Pickett over my son?" Like, and, meanwhile, Colorado's got a game in a couple days against, Colorado State, and he's not, he's in Cleveland doing that. I don't know. So, on to the first round. Um, I wouldn't say there were too many surprises. I felt like it was
Uh, I think there were. I
I think
disagree.
there were some things I didn't see coming, but only a couple that I was like, "Oof, like, what the hell's going on here?"
My overall draft take for the whole first round, and then we'll get into each team and we'll kind of do little blurbs on each one,
Yeah.
was a lot of these bad teams, Michael, watched the Super Bowl and they were like, damn, we need to get a Milton Williams on our team. Because I think there was a lot of D tackle reaches where I'm just like,
People are definitely they looked at the Eagles, and they looked at how obviously Milton Williams, but also Jalen Carter, and it's like Jordan Davis, and they're looking at all
yeah,
these D
yeah, but it's like
tackles.
Jalen Carter, Michael. It's sort of like, I don't know, man. Imagine like, dude, that would be like watching, I don't know, like Calvin Johnson in his prime, and then being like, "Oh, we need to draft a wide receiver." It's like, yeah, like, and he reached for wide receivers. It's sort of like Jalen Carter's like a one of one type player.
No, I think it's more so like you see how much good interior defensive linemen can affect the game, where teams are just like taking swings of like, okay, if we could land Milton Williams or we could land Jalen Carter, Jordan, whatever. We just land good interior D linemen. They can press the pocket, they can pass rush, and they can stop the run. And it's like, wow, you really a good interior D line brings the floor of your defense up a ton. And I don't know, part of the appeal of guys like Moro Jomo and Milton Williams for the fact that they were third round picks, third, fourth
Well,
round, like
Ojoma was a
the
seventh
Jomo
round pick.
seventh round, like third round pick, day 3 pick. The appeal of those are like, oh, those are hidden gems that you find. Milton Williams wasn't getting drafted in the first round. If Milton Williams was good enough to get drafted in the first round, he got paid a lot sooner, like that sort of thing. If Milton Williams is good enough to get played in the first, if Milton Williams was good enough to be drafted on day 1, he would not have gone to a situation like the Eagles where you're pairing him with Fletcher Cox and Jalen Carter, where he's really able to kind of blossom and show off his skills and learn from those guys. You're drafting Milton Williams in the first round, you probably don't have another really good D tackle with him, that sort of thing. And that's what teams are doing, drafting this D tackle maybe without having some great ones with them. But
Hmm.
let's get into the picks. So Cam Ward to the Titans, first overall. I mean,
I
we've known that
mean,
was
like,
happening
well,
for
come on,
quite
we all
some
knew this
time.
for weeks.
Yeah.
I'm going to
I
say this though, Michael. I do think that like he's going to start day one for them. I
Yeah.
think he's going to start day one. And listen, I think after the they could win 6 or 7 games next year because they lost so many games because their quarterback play was absolutely shambolic.
Yeah, they lost a lot of close games. And I like Cam Ward. I think that he has a nice floor and he's got enough talent of a ceiling that can really, maybe not be something special, like special, but I think can be a pretty good quarterback in this league for a while. And you know, I think similar to how Shador apparently turned everyone off in the postseason pre-draft phase of this, time period. I think Cam Ward did the opposite in a way of he won a lot of people over. I think a lot of people saw his nonchalant play style and thought that like, oh, this kid, who does he think he is? But apparently it was great interviews or whatever, like that sort of thing. So clearly won people over in that regard for
Well, when you
whatever
watch his
reason.
tape, I mean, he's got a better arm than Shador.
He's got more arm talent. He's definitely has the best
Gets the
arm
ball
talent in the
out
draft.
quicker,
Yeah.
more productive, very
Yeah.
more productive. And I think the 98 sacks in 2 years for Shador is a
That's a
major
rough
red.
one.
It's a
Yeah.
major red flag. Like
Yeah.
basically, like is he Justin Fields? Because that's like you watch Justin Fields play, it's like
Oof.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So then we get to
The big trade.
number 2, and this was I like this move for both teams, and I will have, like, some Browns takes. So the Browns drop out of 2 to 5, and they pick up, what'd they pick up? A second round pick, and did they get a first next year too?
They got the Jags first.
They got the Jags first next year, and they picked up a second, and then they swapped some late round picks. So let's start from the Jags perspective. One, if you're Jacksonville and you really believe like Travis Hunter is that guy, is going to be that special talent that everyone kind of thinks he is, I think it's a worthy swing. I think that's a very interesting and calculated risk. And their GM is 34 years old, and Gladstone really, to me, feels like every move he's going to make is going to be a pretty calculated risk. He gave his whole like soapbox with Hunter and Liam Cohen up there, and he didn't stutter once talking about like, the vision and how players like Travis Hunter are super rare and like they push the bounds of what makes a great player in football, that sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, no, we've never seen someone like him, all that stuff. And I think it's a great move, man. You look at if he is going to play both sides, which I think the plan is he is going to be playing both sides. We all, I think, agree he's going to be a pretty damn good corner. Like at his floor is like a really, really good cornerback. But the offensive side of the ball is a really great receiver that all of a sudden, that Jags offense is very quickly pretty filled with some top end weapons. A receiver duo of Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter sounds petrifying for defenses. That really is something special. And I think, Liam Cohen and the GM getting their hands on Trevor Lawrence and kind of fine tuning where he needs to be fine tuned and then surrounding him with weapons, guy like Travis Hunter, who does have a great catch radius, something perfect for a guy like Lawrence, whose accuracy can be a little wonky at times. I think that's a really, really great pick for Jacksonville. I really thought they nailed it with that.
I agree, Michael. I completely agree with you with their aggressiveness to get Travis Hunter. I think it's great for the. I think it's great for the Jaguars organization to have that type of player, because it's going to get you more attention around the
Gets you a
league.
ton of attention. Trevor Lawrence already gets you somewhat of attention, but that kind of has fallen off over the years, the attention aspect of
And
it.
also too, like you need to like if he is like the Shohei Otani of the NFL, think of it from like a roster standpoint where you're paying a potential like number one receiver and number one corner right now on a rookie contract, for the cost of one player.
Yeah, no, that's special to have. And when it's time to pay him, that'll be tough. But for those 3, 4 years he get beforehand, it'll be pretty nice bang
Like
for your buck.
that's the thing, and that's where like I think on paper the Cleveland Browns got a lot of value here, except I was looking at like the teams that made the playoffs last year and the teams that missed the playoffs. Like so each year there's always like one division winner and then one wild card team in each conference that like makes the play like misses the playoffs and then
Yeah.
two new teams take, move up. Michael, the only I think the Jaguars might win the AFC South with like 9 wins. That's how little I rate that division.
Yeah. I think that division's gonna be a slugfest where the winner is only gonna have like 9, 10 wins. And it could be the Jags. It really
And it
could.
could be the Jags. So I think like that first round pick on paper, like it's sort of like when the Cardinals got really cute when they traded Will Anderson to get those
Yeah.
extra picks. And then it blew up in their face when the Texans were good.
Yeah.
And then now they have to go and pay Josh Sweat a bunch of money because, they could have
Yeah.
had Will Anderson.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's certainly the the Browns' risk is just, Travis Hunter being one of the greats that we've ever seen in the sport, and it's like he was right there in your lap, like he just was kinda gift wrapped to you, and you didn't take him, and you decided otherwise, and you decided to trade back, and I guess we'll get to 5 because I don't hate it, but before you know what? I guess we can talk about it. They took Mason Graham at 5, the D tackle from Michigan. I think he's gonna be a good player. I like Mason Graham. I like what I've seen. All the tapes, they all look good for everybody, but pro comp beating, Christian Wilkins, that's pretty encouraging. And if the Browns it seemed like the Browns just didn't want Travis Hunter in a way of like, we don't think that's gonna help us at the moment a ton. Could you have argued, you should have just taken Abdul Carter at 2? I guess they felt like they got an offer they couldn't refuse.
Yeah, do you remember when Schefter a couple of weeks ago talked about about the tush push, about how so many teams try to copy the Eagles' formula for success, and they
Yeah,
just can't, and it just doesn't work.
yeah,
Andrew Barry used to work for the Eagles.
yeah,
This screams total like Howie Rose. This is sort of like screams like Howie Roseman thinking or Eagles thinking of let's get these extra picks and we'll beef up our line.
yeah.
Except the fact that I'm not that high on Mason Graham. I think he'll be a solid player, but like they took like Dylan Gabriel in like that's a waste of a pick. And like I and like
Yeah,
and like when we talk about the Eagles pick, a lot of people ask why did the Eagles give up a fifth round pick to move up? Like the Chiefs probably weren't going to take them. Well, you
the
saw who the Browns
Browns
took at 33. They took
yeah,
Schlesinger. They did
the
that so
Browns were
the
definitely
Browns couldn't
trying to
pick up
move
the
up.
phone and call the Chiefs to move up 2 spots to take Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, to me, it's like the Browns are trying to emulate the Eagles, except for the fact they do like all like I don't know. It's sort of like there's no originality. It's like we're trying to
yeah.
copy them what they do, even though like there's a method to their madness that that makes them
Mhm.
successful. Where the Browns are the Cleveland Browns, Michael. They're an absolute joke of an
This is
organization.
what they do for sure. We'll
This
see
the
how it
most
pans
saddest
out.
part is we couldn't have Travis Hunter because we gave up 3 firsts for Deshaun Watson.
Well, ultimately, yes.
So let's
Anyways,
speaking of the NFC East. Okay, like the Giants, they took Abdul Carter. It's weird to see a generational pass rusher go third overall and not first overall, but well, it
yeah,
happened, right?
Abdul Carter's I think he's gonna be a pretty damn good player. We'll see if he is as good as Micah Parsons or whatever, but feels like that same similar type of player. Not much to talk about there. They
what are
nailed
your
him.
thoughts on Abdul Carter desperately trying to fit in with the Giants culture, and he's already off to like an awkward start where he was on Micah Parsons' podcast saying he wants to wear 56 in honor of Lawrence Taylor, and then Lawrence Taylor immediately was like, "F
No.
off."
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if he thought Lawrence Taylor would be nice. Like, not that Lawrence Taylor should give up his
Well, because
entire number or
Warren
whatever.
Moon is going to let Cam Ward wear number one.
Yeah, but like knowing what you know, what everybody knows about Lawrence Taylor, I don't think Lawrence Taylor's the most
Nicest
giving human.
person.
Yeah. So
I agree with that, but I do think it's funny. So
no, it
you know,
is funny because he's still in
it's
damage
gonna be
control.
even funnier when after the first Eagles Giants game when Abdul Carter's gonna like basically go up to everyone on the Eagles and be like try to jersey swap as much as he can.
Yeah, listen, he had to do like heavy damage, not damage control, but like he did a lot of cheering for the Eagles throughout their playoff run. And I think when it really came time to like, all right, let's start looking at mock drafts, all that sort of stuff, I think he kind of saw there was writing on the wall that he was going to be a giant. And especially as of late, it was like he's definitely going to be a giant. I think he started like shit. I gotta tone it down a little bit. I can't be, you know. So I think he's doing what he has to do, which is good for him. Okay, now Will Campbell to the New England Patriots, and an interesting prospect. Mentally, I think I wouldn't want any other mentality from my offensive lineman. This dude is locked in. He, says he would die to protect his offensive line, protect his quarterback. He goes, ask any quarterback I play with. I'm a quarterbacks guy. Um, he's really gonna effort level and toughness and intensity. I don't doubt for a second out of him. Mentality is really, really there. Like he's given some good interviews where he's like, listen, I didn't get any chatter for 3 years, and now all of a sudden my arms are too short to be considered to be a good player. And it's like I I I totally respect that, and I think that's good that that's the mentality that he has. However, his arms are short. His arms are short for a offensive tackle.
He looked,
Obviously,
dude, when he was walking out to the stage. He looked like a dwarf.
it's interesting because I feel
With
like we're not
his
so
arms look
far.
abnormally short.
I feel like we're just at a point where we're not so far removed from similar discourse with tackle arm length, talking about Joe Tooney with the Kansas City Chiefs, where, Joe Tooney, one of the best guards in football, but they had to bump him out to tackle because of some injuries. And the biggest concern was, Joe Tooney's got really short arms and he struggled because of it. He won some reps because he's still smart enough and a good enough mentality type of player. But sometimes there's only so much that you can do where you go up against these good long armed pass rushers and it's like for example, is Miles Garrett gonna just run through him constantly because he can just get his hands on him first, that sort of thing. So I'll be intrigued to watch him.
This Patriots pick just reeked of drafting for need because if you recall, Drake May didn't start the season for the Patriots not because of skill.
Hmm.
It was because they were worried they didn't want him to get injured immediately because their O line was so bad.
Yeah.
Like so, I
Yeah.
mean, Michael, like I'm sure Will Campbell, if he moves to guard, will probably be a really good guard. But like, man, I don't want to be drafted a tackle fourth overall, and then be like, we got to move him to guard when there's another tackle that got picked later who probably should have been the fourth overall pick.
Yep. Yep.
So let's go.
Next.
Yeah, so we're going to number 6, Ashton Genty to the Raiders. I'll say this, Michael. It's really the last time like the best running back and best tight end in football were on the same team. I was trying to think. It was probably like Priest Holmes and Tony Gonzalez on like the Chiefs in the early 2000s. Like I don't like
um New England never had any. It was Gronk.
The Chiefs never did with Kelsey.
No, Jimmy Graham even no. Like uh Antonio Gates and LaDainian
That's
Tomlinson.
it.
That's probably
That's
as close as
that's
you can
one.
get. Yeah, yeah. So
They still put up a ton of points, even though the receivers were maybe not the best.
yeah. So my, my thought with Genty is I think first of all, I think he's a great dude. I see like he posts on TikTok and stuff with his girlfriend, and I think he's a really cool guy, whatever. As far as like a prospect goes, I think I have some hesitations for him because his play style is just what? He's really, really hard to tackle. He's a great runner, super strong physical runner that's
He's not going to have a
impossible to
long career in
tackle.
the NFL, but trying to initiate contact constantly.
He's just not very big. It's like he plays like Derrick Henry, but he's a lot smaller than Derrick Henry. You're hoping he turns into Marshawn Lynch, but we see how like Marshawn Lynch, for example, was 5'11", and Ashton Genty is 5'9". And like you think when you think of like the big bruising running backs who had a pretty decently long prime, the only one that I think of is Marshawn Lynch, like someone that's not that big as a bruising running back. Like even guys like LeGarrette Blount who were in the league for a while. LeGarrette Blount's huge. That dude's a mammoth. And then you look at Derrick Henry, another big person. Adrian Peterson was pretty big, even, and he was also obviously freak talent wise. Most of the guys that are super physical running backs that last a while tend to be big. And Ashton
From
Genty,
Bettis.
quite yeah, Ashton Genty is quite small. And I think there's just concern for how healthy he'll be able to be.
He's
And
big for his height profile, but in terms of like, obviously he's short.
just pure size. He's just a small dude. And I think that the issue with drafting a running back this high for anybody is the same of just like, you know, are the Raiders in a position like David Montgomery is 5'10", and I'd say David Montgomery is probably like a decent sort of comp in terms of Montgomery's just a really hard guy to tackle. But you look at Genty, he was not a great receiver, like not some super massive weapon out of the backfield. He's not like a crazy burner. It's sort of like Derrick Henry, where if Derrick Henry gets downhill, it's like you're just not catching him. Genty, if he got downhill, it's very hard to catch him. But at his size, it just feels like the injury concerns are going to be pretty rampant. And as a team like the Raiders that I guess they're trying to pry open a window by getting someone like Geno, a 35-year-old quarterback, you're trying to win within 2 years. The roster itself is not good enough to be ready to compete where I just feel like you're going to be you might almost be wasting the best years of Ashton Genty, which could be these like first 3-4 years of his career. And I don't know if the Raiders are 3-4 years away from actually being serious contenders. And we'll see how it works out. But a lot of the appeal on a great running back, obviously with Saquon, is that the Eagles had everything they needed to be a contender. Saquon just pushed it over the edge. And I think that it's very similar. You look at the Ravens, it's like they have everything they need, and they added Derrick Henry to push them over the edge. And you ran to what they ran, and the Eagles with Saquon. The Titans were able to build a pretty decent contender with um, Derrick Henry, but there was limitations with the rest of the roster. And I think that the Raiders might be in a similar situation where you were peak in these first few years of Genty could maybe be like an 11-win season.
I get I don't know. I get the vibe the Raiders, I mean, especially with Brady. They're weird. Like they have an old head coach, but like they have Tampa Bay. They do like who's their GM? Raiders,
Um,
Raiders GM.
it's
Spy Tech. Wow, Spit
yeah,
Tech.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, he's Tampa Bay's like one of their top guys. So like he's
Yeah,
obviously a big time talent evaluator. Tampa Bay's very good at drafting, and we'll get to that in just a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's like the Tampa Bay. That's a fun pick. I do think, yeah, it's
yeah. So next in the top 10, Missouri tackle Armand Membu to the New York Jets. The Jets going with like the boring pick is probably at for the best at this point. Feels like they've been taking some big swings and have been missing pretty often in the top of the draft. And not once did we hear the Jets were a position were a team that was going to draft a quarterback. Which I don't know. It felt like the league was like, all right, no quarterbacks for you this year. I was like, okay. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's like a bad pick necessarily. We'll see how he pans out. Similar, first Aaron Glenn era draft pick and offensive lineman, very similar to what the Lions did when they first hired Dan Campbell and that whole staff with
the
Penei
thing
Sewell.
with Armand Membu that I find intriguing is that he's a very athletic offensive lineman,
Hmm.
and I wonder. I was kind of like, oh, like, are they trying to like kind of like the Eagles? Are they like? Do you think these teams want like these guys like Lane Johnson, like super athletic, like tackles, like especially on the right side because the pass
I mean,
rushers now are way more athletic. Like you got edge rushers running like 4.4s now. Like do need athletic tackles to.
you need athletic offensive linemen, man. Like just as a whole, you look at the best offensive lines in football, and it's because they have really good athletic ones. It's just what it is. So, all right, next pick,
I
Ted
wasn't
McMillan
not a fan of this pick.
to the Carolina Panthers of Arizona. I don't know. I don't.
I mean, when your floor is JJ Arthega Whiteside, that scares me.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty low floor. I look at wow. I like the fact that they didn't just draft based on like, all right, we need defense. Defense was so bad. I like the fact that it's like, listen, let's get some weapons here for Bryce Young to help further his development. I think everyone agrees after the benching, and then he came back. Bryce Young looked like pretty
A
solid for
first
the rest
overall
of the
pick.
year. Like he looked like a guy was like, all right, this is the flashes. He's making the plays. He looked good against the Chiefs, looked good against the Eagles, that sort of thing. I think to further the priority has got to be like, all right, let's just further make the situation directly around him as good as possible. And I think, a big body receiver that you can kind of flick the ball around to. Eh, it's not terrible.
I just watched his highlights, man, and like he looks like he should be a tight end.
But he's not very fast to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like dude, like I just and look, like I'm sure the Panthers were desperately trying to trade back. They probably wanted to trade back to either take Tet McMillan or even Igbuka, probably,
Yeah.
right? They had
Yeah.
no takers, so they kind of just picked for need. And whenever we see this happen, Michael, in the NFL, it usually goes wrong. Like like you brought up, oh, let's get him some weapons, which I agree
Hmm.
with. But like, I don't know, man. I really like Kelvin Banks.
There's
Like,
other, yeah.
like why don't we get Kelvin Banks and we'll just build like the best. We'll try to build a great O line and
Well,
we'll.
part of it is what was the report that Bryce Young came into the office and was like, I really want Ted McMillan.
Oh,
Well, so you're trying to, you trust in your quarterback. So we'll see how that plays out. Kelvin Banks, like you mentioned, goes next to the New Orleans Saints. Was not the highest graded tackle in the draft, but the Saints, I don't know. Your 3 straight years on drafting a first round offensive tackle, and it's not just like, oh, we really got to build it out. It's, oh, we keep drafting ones that suck. So we have to keep taking swings, and I just feel like it's going to be pretty tough to write
Michael,
down.
I'll say this though. I like Kelvin Banks. I'll say this though about the New Orleans Saints. If we were to bet who's going to have the first overall pick next year, I'd probably put the Saints at like minus 250.
That is absurd. I mean, you're thinking they're going to win like 2 games.
Yes.
Listen, I'm all for it. Next pick we have here, 10th overall, an interesting one. The Chicago Bears taking Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan. I like Loveland as a prospect. What's his pro comp? I saw what
It's Laporta.
Laporta and Ben Johnson. Feels if he thinks he's Laporta, he thinks he's Laporta. So no
I do
surprise to
feel
draft him there.
though for the Bears that I think they took Loveland because I think they thought Banks was going to be there where they picked. And this is where I think that Ryan Poles, he's like, I don't know, Timu Howie. He really is like Timu Howie with like,
Hmm.
makes these moves that everyone loves. And they either like bad things happens that negate them.
Right.
Like, for example, like
It was like the DJ Moore trade was, I thought, really good, and Roma Dunes I thought was a nice draft pick, but then you gave DeAndre Swift, like, how much money,
and then you
and it
trade a
just kinda
second
blew
round
up
pick
in your
for Keenan
face.
Allen for 1 year of
Right,
Keenan Allen.
right. Just it's very polarizing decisions that he makes.
And you pass on Jalen Carter and you're all high fiving everybody because you didn't take Jalen Carter. And now you look like a complete ass clown.
Yeah. So, we'll see how this plays out. Mykel Williams, Georgia edge rusher.
Nick Bosa is not going to like that.
No, he's not, but it doesn't, feels like you can't go wrong with, the Georgia pass rusher.
Yeah, their D line sucks. I mean, listen, Michael,
Yeah.
I don't think the Niners are a good team.
No, I think they missed their window.
Yes, I think the window,
Window's
the
closed, they gotta open a new one.
they got it. You're correct, and I do what I do find interesting, and maybe with the whole Brock Purdy, like them not wanting to pay him what he wants. What if they take Shador?
What if they take Shador? Wow, I don't know what I would mention that.
Kyle Shanahan? Like, come on, man.
Maybe.
If you're Dion, like, if there's a guy that can make bad quarterbacks look competent,
Mhm.
it's him.
Next pick, the Dallas Cowboys
And I don't think Shador's
reached
bad. I was just like, come on, like,
no, this is funny. They reached Tyler Booker, guard from Alabama. Um, Weak guard class as a whole, and Tyler Booker, you can put as much value and stock into raw athletic scores as you want. The Eagles obviously put some pretty high stock in it, so maybe there's something to it. Tyler
Michael,
Booker
we've
had a
been putting,
very
NFL GMs have putting stock in athleticism for the last 60 years.
Tyler Booker did not grade too well in the raw athletic score. One of the worst in the first round, maybe the worst in the
Well,
first
neither did
round.
Tyler Guyton last year, if you think about it.
Now, listen, his pro comp being Tyler Smith, pretty funny. Um, but we'll see. The Cowboys definitely needed some offensive line help, and outside of this pick, it felt like the Cowboys after this one were like, all right, let's just look at the Eagles' big board. Like, who are players being linked to the Eagles, and we'll just draft them. And that feels like what they did last night with the Boston College defensive end, and then the Eastern Carolina, right? Eastern Carolina corner that they took. That's who they took, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Feels like they just looked at players that were linked to the Eagles after that. But I don't know. We'll see how this
They are
reach
definitely the
plays out.
egregious, like, we copy the Eagles. Like,
Yeah, they try, man. They try their damnedest to do that. Next pick, we have Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle to Michigan. This is what you're talking about. Like teams drafting a D tackle because they think they need it. I think he's a nice player. It'll be interesting to see how he compares to Mason Graham at the pro level. But you know,
I mean, Michael, like, I can't help but feel with all these Michigan players being taken, like they won the Natty 2 years ago.
hmm
They weren't that good last year, and I know like that's not an excuse for like,
well,
but
they've
like,
back quarterback play. You know,
I don't know, man. Like, I'm not to oversimplify shit, but like the Eagles are grabbing Georgia players when they were like one of the most dominant teams in college football history.
yeah.
The Eagles grabbing Alabama players when they were a really
I
dominant
mean,
team.
just Alabama. Yeah,
And I'm not trying to sound like a hypocrite because, like, listen, the guard the Cowboys took was from Alabama, but like also too, like Alabama, infamously, their O lineman, like the only really good Alabama O lineman that I can think of is Landon Dickerson. That's why I was afraid when the Eagles took Landon Dickerson a couple years
right.
ago. Was like
Yeah,
their O linemen kind of just don't like kind of bust. They get picked high, a lot of them bust,
yeah,
you know. But now, in regards to
yeah,
Kenneth Grant, like, listen, Kenneth Grant's probably going to be a solid player. I'm not saying he stinks, but 13 overall, like this is why like the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Eagles perennially stay good because it always feels like good players drop to them because these bad teams, these incompetent teams, just basically it's like monkey see, monkey do.
right.
It's a copycat league. They try to
Mhm.
copy the other good teams as opposed to just you know doing their own evaluations and then like going with their gut and kind of like how they want to build a team.
Yeah. All right. Let's speed, not speed, but
Yeah, we'll
a
just
little
move
bit.
faster. Yeah,
Tyler
so
Warren to Penn
Theo
State,
asked his favorite player, Tyler
to the
Warren.
Bolts. Yeah, interesting because I think Theo does bring up some good points. Tyler Warren, like his lack of kind of separation that he created. He's not the biggest tight end out there, but he is a good receiving weapon. It'll be interesting to see how he translates. The Colts desperately needed a tight end. We'll see how he translates to the NFL level. Um, but I think people are pretty positive on the pick.
It's funny here.
Jalen.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
sorry. Go
reminds.
ahead.
Yeah, is it possible he's the best thrower of the ball right now in Indianapolis?
That's just a shame. Wow. Anyways, Jalen Walker to Georgia. Oh, Jesus, to Georgia. Well, he's staying there. Going to the Atlanta Falcons from Georgia. Get some Harold Landry comps. Pretty highly ranked prospect to be able to get it 15. I think a lot of people thought the Falcons got pretty good value there with
I
him.
would agree with that.
Um, but it's more their other pick in the first round that has people shaking their heads. But I do think that Jalen Walker is
It does
a
feel
pretty
like the
nice player.
Falcons. It's like they take one step forward and two steps back.
Steps back, yeah. Next pick, Walter Nolan, Ole Miss to the Arizona Cardinals. Guy the
I thought
Eagles
the
were
Eagles were
linked
going
to.
to pick this guy.
Yeah, a lot of people thought the Eagles were linked to him. Maybe Gannon was doing the same thing of looking at like, all right, who do the Eagles want? Maybe I should pick them. Like, I don't think that's totally out of the question.
You know, that's a good point. I don't think it's so much specifically the Eagles, but like the reason why everyone here hated the Fangio scheme is that now that we like learned, now that we have the power of hindsight, is that Jonathan Gannon is just a copycat of the Fangio scheme, and like he puts and like I don't know, he puts his own little wrinkles in,
Yeah.
but he's probably like we need a D tackle. I
hmm
need someone similar to what we had in Milton Williams.
hmm
Milton Williams stood us up at
Yeah.
the 11th hour, so we still
Yeah.
need a D tackle. And this guy, Walter Nolan, is very similar to Milton Williams.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shamar Stewart then goes
Oh, thank God this guy didn't follow the Eagles.
to the Bengals. A lot of people have some concerns with him. Um, but
Texas A&M's defense was literally garbage last year.
yeah, but the Bengals desperately need some pass rush help. I mean, Trey Hendrickson leading the league in sacks, and the Bengals were like
They don't want to
dead
pay.
last in sack rate. Like that's pretty hard to do. I don't really know how that's possible, but it's because no one else is getting sacks. So you need some help, and this is the avenue you take. Greg Zabel, a guard that went to the Seattle Seahawks, another team that desperately needed some offensive line help. Highest ranked guard according to Matt Miller. Um, you know, a lot of people they really did need to address the interior of their offensive line because Gino was just under duress pretty constantly, especially from up the middle. Um, and even then, he was still one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league last year. So it's something that, you give Darnold time and you can see some good results come from it.
Yeah, I think I thought he was going to go to the Cowboys because he's like he looks similar profile to Rashawn Slater, a guy that he could play multiple positions on the O line. The
Yeah.
Cowboys right now, like they took BB last year. He plays center and guard.
Yeah.
Um, because because you want like that versatility. It's really good on your offensive line. Like we know the Cowboys
Hmm.
like their move guys around the line before.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be their pick, and I think that's good value for the Seahawks for like what, and they needed O line help, especially now they have Darnold who sees
Hmm.
ghosts.
Yeah. Now the draft it starts getting a little more interesting. It starts with Tampa taking Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, wide receiver. Granted, I think a lot of people thought they were going to draft Jahad Campbell. I really do. And they went wide receiver, which I think to some people is surprising. They just gave Chris Godwin a nice contract. Mike Evans is
Or I was
still
thinking maybe
there.
corner.
That as well. And they did address that on day two. But I don't know. I think they know what they're good at, and it's throwing the football. And I think they just kind of want to replenish the receivers as both Evans and Godwin are aging, and Godwin's obviously hurt again. Um, but that receiving core is pretty deep down there in Tampa for sure.
Yeah, I think this. I liked Emeka Abuka a lot.
Hmm.
I think that because look, Mike Evans, he's near the end of his career. They had to he missed time last year, and you said Godwin
Hmm.
had that injury. I think this kind of screams to me though that you're going to see Baker Mayfield is going to get a massive extension.
Maybe this next pick is one of my favorites in the first round. Denver Broncos selecting Jade Barron, cornerback from Texas. Actually, pro comp to Cooper DeJean as he a lot of defensive versatility. Both played outside, slot, safety. He'll likely be the opposite corner to Pat Surtain. It's a the Broncos defense was one of the best in the league last year, and it feels like it got just a lot better this offseason. From Hufanga to Dre Greenlaw and now Jade Barron. It felt like they took the parts of their defense that lacked a bit and not lacked as in negative, but lacked as in just was solid enough to keep you as one of the best defenses. And they just raised it tenfold. They just made it so much better. So the Broncos, they'll definitely rival the Eagles for the best defense in the NFL again. Those two teams will be at the top, and I think this is a great pick for that. So I think both teams made a really good pick to help replenish some of the stuff that they could and make it even better. So I definitely really like this pick from Denver.
I agree with you on that. I think it was a really good pick for Denver. You know what? I think if you're the Chiefs, you might be a little frustrated because now it's if Denver keeps building, it looks like it's going to be Denver and Kansas City are going to battle for the next couple years for the AFC West supremacy. Up, until the Chiefs, replenish their roster and reload and get.
Yeah, which they're off to a good start with this draft, I think. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
next pick we have is Derek Harmon of the Oregon Ducks. I like this pick a lot. Pretty sad story with his mother passing as soon as he was drafted. Very tragic stuff there. But the player, Derek Harmon himself, is a very just you talk about a guy that can at his size, still be as athletic as he is and get free off blocks and make plays in the backfield. It's just one of those, like, D tackles that can totally take over a game and really cause some problems for the other team. It helps a lot for, like, a team like Baltimore that really wants to run the ball a ton. It helps against even a team like Cleveland that, they drafted a running back on day 2, and with their quarterback situation is definitely gonna be trying to run the ball. So, definitely helps their case a lot against these, their division opponents, and, even Buffalo runs the ball too, so.
It does feel like the Steelers, they're just building in the trenches, and I also think too that I'm surprised they didn't take a running back. In all honesty, in this spot,
Well, then one went right after. Um,
that's why I was surprised.
yeah, yeah, so Amari and Hampton, North Carolina running back to the Chargers. Chargers desperately needed a running back. Last year it was fun with J.K. Dobbins, but he was also banged up. And the way Jim Harbaugh likes to run his offense, he likes to pound the rock. And even with Herbert, he still likes to pound it. And getting someone like Amari and Hampton, who really did look like Joe Mixon. They were talking like, I mean, tell me this isn't just Joe Mixon the way he was running. I was like, it really does look like him. So another kind of Joe Mixon comp that other running backs in this class are getting as well. So I think it's a solid pick for Los Angeles.
Uh, so like when I look at the other running backs and then I look at Amari and Hampton, it feels like to me the Chargers could have waited till the second round to address running back, or possibly just move up. And you heard about the trade the Eagles had agreed upon with the Chargers. It just fell through because they couldn't get it announced in time.
Right.
That
So
now
they
it's
were clearly trying to trade back.
and then they just probably took Hampton because they knew that's probably who they were going to take when they moved back to 32.
We tried.
I mean,
Yeah,
they just
interesting.
charged it. I mean, they basically charged it up.
They charged it up. They could have got an extra
And
like
like,
fourth
and
out of the
listen, Michael,
Eagles.
not for nothing, man. Like watching the Chargers last year, like what was their biggest issue besides Justin Herbert pissing down his own leg against the Texans? Their receivers outside of Lab McConkey, it's a joke. Like you have the two TCU busts as your other receivers. And
Yeah.
I feel like like listen, like they're gonna probably bring back Keenan Allen, right? Whatever. That
Oof.
he's like 34, 35 years old. That's great.
Yeah.
But like if you're the Chargers and you're working the phones, why don't you try to move up to get Igbuka? Why don't you try to, why don't you maybe try to keep work the phones to move back and maybe take Luther Burden? Like
Maybe.
to me, it's like I don't know, man. It's they suck. They ball anyway.
Yeah. Next pick, Matthew Golden. Speaking of receivers, to the Green Bay Packers. I think this is a nice move for them. They clearly need receiver help just as much as the Chargers do. Packers are a team that's like, just get a receiver that's better than the ones you already have, and it makes all the ones you already have so much better. And, this is what their swing at that is.
Here's the thing though with Green Bay.
Yeah. I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. So
No,
you
you're
keep
good.
talking.
No, you're good. The Green Bay Packers, they just keep drafting number two receivers, and like that's just kind of what they do. I'm not saying that Matthew Golden won't ever be a like he can't be a number one, but when you just look at the Packers and you look at their offense, like you just like you just having that number one receiver really helps your offense, not just with just passing the ball, but committing, having freeing up the middle of the field. And I think their thought process with this, because he's so fast, it's going to open up maybe more running lanes for Josh Jacobs, because they can't commit an extra safety into the box. You have to commit that with Golden. It's very similar to Xavier Worthy with the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, but yeah, I'm going to wait for Michael to get back to talk about the next pick, which is Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, who was selected by the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll just wait for Michael to get back.
Sorry about that. Okay.
There you go. I just finished
So
talking about Matthew Gold.
yeah.
I basically, so I said was
Oh,
like,
I heard. I kept the
oh,
headphones. I think
okay.
it's a yeah. I think you're right. It does totally bolster out the rest of that core. Donovan Jackson to the Vikings. The pro comp being Isaac Sayamalu,
That's kind
something
of,
pretty funny. Just like it's good that he's gotten good enough where he's a solid pro comp. But again, interior offensive line help is it's just important, especially, they signed Will Fries in the offseason, so they're really making a point to bolster that offensive line of theirs. And it kind of did them in the playoffs. They got abused with blitzing and kind of getting ran through. And obviously, Darnold was seeing ghosts once the playoffs rolled around. So,
I
yeah.
agree. Yeah, I agree. They want to bolster their O line too. Yeah, I mean, they got JJ McCarthy back there, and now you have to really make it a point of emphasis to protect him because he's never started an NFL game in his life. And now
Hmm.
he's expected to quarterback a team that has Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, so okay, here we go. Now we're
This is the
getting
pick of the first
to
round.
the chaos. Oh boy,
The
God.
New York Giants, the New York Football Giants, traded up from what was the full trade?
They moved up in the they moved up in the second round. They traded a third round pick this year and a third round pick next year to
Mhm.
move up with with Houston to
Houston
Houston's spot.
received the 34th overall pick, the 99th overall pick, and the third next year, so the Giants can move up and select Jackson Dart, quarterback, Ole Miss. They want him to be Eli. I I don't know. When your pro comp is Bo Nix, like that just is so uninspiring. Um, Reckless player, took a lot of big hits in college. Definitely going to have to reel that in. Feels pretty similar to Daniel Jones, in all honesty. He, like Daniel Jones is a really good running quarterback and is a lot, not a lot, but is definitely bigger than Jackson Dart. But it feels like they both suffer from the same issues in terms of mechanics and accuracy and footwork, and I don't know. It just feels like a
Well,
project that they
Lane
made.
Kiffin, he runs an off. He was the former NFL head coach, former offensive coordinator at Alabama, um, former now current head coach of the Ole Miss Running Rebels. Michael, he's kind of known for it's the one read system. Quarterback makes one read. The
And
read's
let it
not
fly.
there. Run.
Yep.
Basically get out of there.
Hmm.
They already had that with Daniel Jones,
Yeah,
right?
they did.
And like, listen, like Eli Manning would make like progressions. Like comparing him to Eli is kind of messed up because Eli was a way better prospect than Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart to me is like he's like Gardner Minshew.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not someone that I don't know. I would not have remotely wanted him, um, at all. I really don't. Uh, it's just I don't think it's a great pick. I think it's as an Eagles fan, I'm pretty happy with it, but if I was a Giants fan, I think I'd be pretty pissed off. But you know,
Especially because like you saw the Commanders get Jane Daniels, who was a prolific player in college.
Hmm.
too, you know?
Yeah. So definitely interesting there. Probably the biggest miss in the first round. Everyone's pretty comfortably agreeing it's the worst pick in the first round. But we'll see how it ages. The next one is up there. Not necessarily in terms of the player. I think that the player, James Pierce, is not like bad by any means. I think he's a nice prospect. Obviously, he was connected to the Eagles for a while. Has some character concerns, not anything like legal wise, but in just in terms of some other, poor character, whatever.
Well, no, it's the fact that he would like not show up to practice,
Right, right.
like that whole
Which,
like and like you see the culture of the Tennessee Volunteers when you see Nico Imalivia
yeah.
holding up the team, like what the hell is going on down in Tennessee, man?
So the big issue that this trade holds is the fact that the Falcons gave up a fucking king's ransom to move up to select James Pierce. They traded their second round pick and what is 242? A fifth, a sixth,
Yeah, they
sixth.
gave up a ton.
They gave up a second, a late round day three pick, and then their first round pick next year to move up to select James Pierce. And like, I don't know, man, to move up like 20 spots, giving up an extra first for it, for a team like, listen, man, I don't think the Falcons are by any means like, I don't know. Do you think the Falcons are going to win like 11 games? Do you think the Falcons are going to win the NFC South? Like they can, sure. I think they'll be in contention.
Uh, to me, the Falcons, to me, I the reason why they didn't win the South is because Kirk Cousins is cooked,
Right.
and they must really love Michael Penix.
I mean, you have to, honestly. You didn't draft him eighth overall when you paid Kirk all that money if you didn't love him.
But to me, like it's pretty much in universal agreement that next year's draft overall is going to be a much deeper draft class
Yeah.
than this draft class. And I don't understand why you'd want to trade unless you're getting a truly game changing player like the Jaguars did with Travis Hunter.
Yeah,
Now,
I it just doesn't make sense. Like the Falcons could pick anywhere from like 9 to like 20, and I don't think I'd be too surprised next year.
I mean,
And
you have Falcons fans like literally like our GM is an idiot.
yeah, like it's not like, for example, like the Eagles or the Chiefs, the Bills trading a future first where that pick's likely going to be from like 26 to 32, where it's like it's something, but it's not, the end of the world. Where the Falcons have a pretty not super like impossible chance to have a like back end top 10 or early teen pick or something like that. And if you're picking 12th overall next year, you're gonna want that shit. And you're, giving it up for, James Pierce. I don't know. It was a lot. I think the Rams made the right decision to move back. Yeah. Next, the Baltimore Ravens, I thought made a pretty damn good pick here. Malachi Starks uh, to the Ravens from Georgia, another safety pair pretty nicely with Kyle Hamilton. Really helps solidify that secondary that you know every year seems to show flashes of being like the worst thing ever, and then it's like, oh, it's actually pretty good, and this just kind of helps steady that out a bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing though with the Ravens secondary, they could potentially have like one of the best safety duo in the league.
Right.
Problem is their corners aren't very good,
Hmm.
and when you also look at the Ravens defense, like inconsistency at the edge rusher position. I thought it might have been. I thought it was going to be. I thought. Oh, look, the reason why the Falcons moved up to take Pierce because Pierce probably would have been a Raven, or I thought the Ravens were going to take Mike Green because he was
Yeah.
falling. Um, Listen, the Ravens they took Malachi Starks, and then they eventually they got Mike Green,
Hmm.
and you know, like the Ravens don't really care at all about character issues. That's never stopped them from drafting players.
Yeah,
Um, Ray Lewis.
it
Uh,
is not, and they made those decisions later. So
and made the decisions later. I mean, like, yeah, this is why the Ravens usually are pretty good. Were you a little surprised though that they didn't try to maybe go offensive line to protect Lamar because like you kind of saw it in that Bills game that like their O line was having trouble holding up. Like Ronnie Stanley, you know, injured a lot. You know, he's obviously good when he's healthy. You know,
I think they might have felt that, if they didn't
like
love
obviously,
any of the
like listen, the Ravens love to do best player available. That's like
yes, that's
their
their MO.
mantra.
And listen, it works out. They're a good team. They're a good organization. They have been for a while now. Maybe they wanted to move up for an offensive lineman, didn't really feel it was inclined, and if they didn't love Josh Simmons, then, this is what you get. Or Connerly. Um, Next up, the Detroit Lions selected Ohio State defensive tackle Tyleek Williams. So the Lions also recognizing how important it is to stop the run, like a lot of these other teams. Listen, the Lions, when their defense started getting decimated with injuries, the weak point became them against, again, I mean, it was everything. Everything was killing them, but teams are really having success pounding the football on the Lions. And, you know, when you want to be that team that's the tough team that's going to punch you in the mouth and is going to run the ball down your throat, you need to have the other side of that to prevent teams from doing that to you. And I think that that's kind of the logic behind this draft selection.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too. And you look at their offense. I mean, really, what on offense would you go and address in the first round if you're the Detroit Lions? Like
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe
this
in
had to have been a defensive pick. I am a little surprised though that they didn't go edge because outside of Aiden Hutchinson, they really don't have a whole lot in terms
no,
of
they don't.
rushing the passer. And like that to me, like Aiden Hutchinson's injury, is a scary injury. He might need another year of playing to just kind of get like I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now, Hutchinson's not going to be like, I feel healthy. I didn't feel
Yeah,
healthy.
I think the Lions, they're investing obviously pretty heavily into their secondary. They have with their draft selections, they made trades. I think they want to be able to stop the run up the middle and have good secondary and then just bank on their pass rush being able to get home because of good coverage. Feels like that's, kind of their goal um, defensively. Next, the Commanders took Josh Connerly, offensive tackle from Oregon. Um, they, they want to get the other side. They made the trade for Laramie Tunsil. Now you have a right tackle, and they're going to have two tackles now for Jaden Daniels, clearly investing in his health and whatnot and his protection. I don't think it's a bad decision. I think Josh Simmons was a more intriguing player, but alas, maybe position right versus left tackle held a little bit more weight in their mind. I don't know.
Yeah, I to me, like, look, they're in the same division as the Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys, who all have edge rushers.
Yeah.
they all have a dominant player that can rush the passer. So
Hmm.
they recognize they got to beef up their line. Um, it's weird. Like to me, it's almost like they made this pick. Like we know Laramie Tunsil's up there in age, and we need to. It's like you acquire a player and then you draft his replacement
Well,
almost.
not for nothing. It's probably not a bad idea. Like if I had to, I gave him so much crap of like all the moves they're making is very short sighted. If this was like, okay, he's gonna play left or right tackle, and then when Tunsil's done, he's gonna swing around to left tackle, and like then I think that's a pretty good move in my opinion, if that works out for them. So, you know, it's interesting, but at least it doesn't seem like such a short-sighted move like all their other draft picks have been as of late, or all their other offseason moves. Sorry. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills. Took Maxwell Hairston. I think he's a really good character guy. It was pretty cool seeing him dap everybody up when they were getting drafted. He was hyping everybody up. Was pretty cool. And Buffalo needed some secondary help.
I
Long are the days of
this is a
Tre'Davious White and
yeah.
stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, Hairston projects as a slot corner, but the Bills already have a slot corner,
Yeah.
and that's a bit concerning to me.
Mhm.
Where you might move him to the outside and it might not work,
Mhm.
or like I don't know. Do you want to move him someone to safety? Like to me with the Bills though, and Buffalo, like they're in a pissing contest with James Cook. I don't think the Bills are as well run as people think, and I think Josh Allen masks a lot of their issues they have.
Josh Allen fixes a lot of problems that listen, there's no surprise that the Bills, they went through such a period of suckage since like their four straight Super Bowl losses, and they just happened to find like, a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback to kind of fix a lot of the problems. He really does put the team on the back a lot. So
All right, now we get. Do you want to talk about the Chiefs pick, and then we'll just save the Eagles pick for
yeah,
last?
so the Eagles and Chiefs swapped spots, likely because the Browns are trying to move up. And the Chiefs at 32 ended up taking Josh Simmons, which I think is a pretty damn good pick. They desperately needed an offensive lineman. Um, their offensive line was about as bad as it's ever been in the Patrick Mahomes era, due to some injuries, but also due to like just the players that you're drafting not really being that good. Juwan Taylor's not that great. So getting a true left tackle, so you're not, obviously let Joe Tooney walk, but like, so you don't have to have a situation where you got to bump out your guard because you don't feel confident in anything else. Probably for the best. So I think it was a good pick for Kansas City.
Not surprised the Chiefs drafted a player that's coming off a serious injury. Like he's going to be supposed to be healthy to
Mhm.
start the year, but just as an Eagles fan, this is Andy Reid was kind of known for drafting players who got injured during the college season, and for value, and then a lot of times it would not work out. Uh,
Mhm.
but but to your point, Michael, like I mean that stage of the draft, like the Chiefs desperately needed like offensive line help,
Mhm.
um, and they're also in a position where they can't really afford to move up to take one because they're an old team. They got a lot of old players, and they got to get younger.
Yeah.
And you know, I think when Jackson Dart got picked, they realized that no one's going to want to trade up with us to take a quarterback now.
Yeah.
So, looks like we're kind of stuck here. And then
Mhm.
we have the Eagles. The Eagles are picking 32, but then they traded a fifth round pick to move up one spot so the Browns couldn't get the Eagles' first round pick, Jihad Campbell. Michael, were you
Is it
surprised?
Jihad? I thought it was Jihad. Just
Jihad,
Jihad.
Jihad.
I think
That
it's
are
just
you
Jihad.
surprised they took Jihad Campbell?
Um, n like, yes and no. Like, clearly they loved Jihad Campbell, despite the fact that they didn't give him a top 30 visit, which to me maybe sounds like they just did not expect him to make it very far into the draft, into the first round. I think they probably figured he'd be
Well,
gone by like maybe 15. Obviously, there's injury
all we
concerns.
heard for the last several months is whenever the Eagles bring in someone for a top 30 visit, they draft him.
Yeah, and they didn't do it.
And they probably like, are you required to announce your top 30 visits to the
Yeah,
press?
I think that's like I think it's just like public. I don't know.
They said that Jeremy Washburn, the Eagles outside linebackers coach, like met with him, I think at the combine or one of like the pro day or something. Like that was the meeting, right?
Yeah, they didn't have the formal, in top
I
30
think the
visit.
Eagles didn't want to tip their hand on who they were going to pick based off of who they bring in for a visit. So like, You
I mean,
know,
I think that's fair. I think it's also like I don't think they thought he'd be around.
they also
I
tried
think
to trade up to draft him.
yeah, no, they wanted him bad, and they tried to trade up. They said they tried to trade up for an hour trying to draft him. They wanted to move up to 22. They wanted to move up to 24, 26. They kept trying, and they ended up having to only move up one spot, which is good. But like, it's like they tried to move up, but then the Giants were offering more because they wanted Jackson Dart. They tried to move up, but the Falcons were going to give the Rams a first round pick because they wanted James Pierce, I guess. Um, but they land Jahad Campbell, who, South Jersey kid, local kid. He grew up an Eagles fan, the whole thing. I think it's a really good fit alongside Zach Bond. A lot of people say he's very similar to Zach Bond. They share very similar traits. They both can kind of rush the edge if they need to. Both very athletic, fast. They can cover pretty well. Um, what does it say about N'Kobe Dean is that N'Kobe Dean suffered a pretty serious injury in the playoffs. And, we'll see when he gets back. But when he does, it feels like you know, they're gonna. I think they'd run three linebackers on the field, not in your traditional 4-3 sense, but as either Zach Bond or Jahad Campbell lining up as an edge rusher, and then N'Kobe Dean and the other one, over the ball, off the ball. So interesting
I have
situation to see how
I
it
have
goes, but
I have semi breaking news.
okay.
NFL Network's Tom Pelissero lists the Eagles as an unexpected team that might take a shot on Shadur Sanders today if he continues to slide.
John, we weren't joking. The Eagles want to be a quarterback factory. There you go. Um, no, but in all seriousness, Jahad Campbell, I think it's a really nice pick. He was a pretty consensus like top 15, excuse me, 15ish prospect. Great raw athletic score, rushed the passer, played off ball, just all that sort of stuff. Really good in coverage. It's, you know, they got a really great fit that I think plays a really good role alongside Bond. I think the linebackers are going to be flying around pretty dominant. What I think this helps a lot is that they're not going to have to rely on their safeties in the run game as much, or even their slot corner with DeJean. I think they were already pretty effective with just their D line and their linebackers against the run, and I think this just kind of helps that out even more, perhaps with losing, CJ and whatnot. So, yeah, I think it was a great pick.
And then, do you want to talk about Andrew Mukuba, the
Yeah,
safety?
Andrew Makuba, safety. Talk about Theo Ash a lot. His favorite safety prospect. He thought he was the best one. Makuba is very very smart, very cerebral player. You can tell just the way he against some of the top receivers. If he has to cover them, doesn't bite on things, makes the right decisions, makes the right reads. I think he really is something special in that sort of way. He's a bit undersized. That's pretty much the only critique that I heard when they were talking about him is that he's small.
Well, who else was
But
undersized?
exactly, yeah, his pro comp is very funny enough, similar to that of CJ Gardner Johnson, an undersized safety who's not afraid to, you know, not afraid to stick his nose in the run game, even if he isn't a great tackler. Like he's willing to throw his body around. He's pretty apt to throw his body around, and he has really great coverage instincts, great recoverability, very fast to close on certain things. Just a very good. I think it's a very good fit again. I don't think the Eagles at all wanted Sidney Brown to be their starting safety, and this is how they address that. So
Yeah, because Sidney Brown is really the backup for Reed Blankenship, and
yeah,
that's probably where they want him to be.
yeah, and like a special teamer, good special teamer. So yeah, I thought the Eagles had a really nice first 2 days, and then they traded out in the third
So we've
round.
been delaying it long enough. We need to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies.
Okay, so they've lost 5 in a row. They are
We haven't done this show in 2 weeks, so
Yeah, it's been pretty bleak for the last 2 weeks. It's been pretty bleak since the Dodgers series, where that felt like a positive turning point, and then things just kinda
went off the rails.
went off the rails a bit. I don't know how to describe it.
Well,
So,
listen, I mean, I'll just preface it with this: is that baseball? There's hills and valleys. You're going to lose games. You're going to win a lot. You're going to lose some games. You're going to win some games. However, I think the overall concern is because the only move you've made this offseason that's panning out is at the strongest area of your team, and the other areas of your team that you really didn't work hard to address are really falling off the wayside. And, it calls into question competency, I think, from the front office.
yeah, here's like Jordan Romano, I'll say, his last 2 outings, like the Marlins outing and the Mets outing, I I might be insane, but I truly didn't think they were, like, the worst things in the obviously, Marlins outing, just getting hit, hit, hit. I really thought he was tipping pitches because his velocity was up. His velocity's been up, and I think he just should throw his fastball more, truly. I think when he tries to get too cute with the slider, um, it's easy to kinda track, and I think he should just rely on the fastball a little bit more. Regardless of the fact of whether I think Romano actually can turn in and have a pretty decent season, which I do think he can, honestly. I've seen some things that have encouraged me with him. The problem as a whole is that you just made bad bets with the bullpen, I guess. You just didn't fully I don't know. You just didn't handle it well because you look at the guys that we like the way they're pitching right now. And right now, the two that we feel the best about, it's clearly Jose Alvarado, who's been really, really good, and Matt Strom, who has been just pretty good all year. Those 2 guys are gonna be, like, dropping dead by August if this is the rate that we have to keep going at, where it's like Alvarado pitched 2 innings against the Mets because we didn't feel that there was a right-handed reliever that we could trust to throw in that spot, and he got the outs, but when the due up 3 for the Mets are Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, and Mark Vientos, like, that is so clearly a right-handed pitcher's spot, and we're throwing Alvarado because we don't trust the righty enough to get outs in that situation. The issue with the bets that they made is they thought that some of the guys that they already had on the team were going to take a jump. They thought Orion Kerkering was going to be able to take a jump from like a comfortable seventh inning, maybe, seventh inning guy into like a your best righty out of the bullpen can shut down anything that you need. They thought Jose Ruiz was going to turn from like a just middle of the game sort of guy to a guy that you can trust to get clutch outs in the later innings. And both of those bets have been pretty wrong at this point. Orion Kerkering, I think, has got all the talent in the world. Maybe got some of the confidence zapped from when he got brought up and put in big spots as a rookie, or maybe is just lacks a little bit of that killer psychopath reliever mentality that you kind of need. Like he might seem too goofy to be a good reliever. Like you kind of got to be crazy, and maybe he's not as crazy enough to do it. I don't know. Jose Ruiz, I kind of believed, I thought he maybe was going to take a step, but he just didn't either. And as a front office, it's just not a well calculated risk to make that they were going to take such big steps. And it's like, they signed Jordan Romano, not as necessarily the Jeff Hoffman replacement because, like, contractually they weren't very similar. It was more like, all right, this is our Estevez replacement. They thought they would get Hoffman type outings from Orion Kerkering, and that's just not happening. So you built a bad bullpen, you built a weak bullpen, and you put Rob Thompson in situations now where there's not a lot of right buttons he can push other than bringing in Strom and Alvarado, and it's like, if every game that you're winning or is close, you have to turn to those 2 guys, they're not going to make it through a full season and a full playoff run if you want them to. Like it's just going to be
Well,
brutal by the time the season
I
ends.
think Kirkering can turn it around. My
I just don't know if he's I don't know if he's that guy to be your essentially like as close to a closer as you can get, you
I like
know?
and like here's my thing too is like Max Kepler, that was their one positional signing. They brought back the entire like position, like basically the whole field, all the fielders, right?
Yeah.
Max Kepler right now, they're with the luxury tax, like so they're paying Max Kepler and Jordan Romano a combined 18 like 19 and a half million, 18 and a half million dollars. But with the
Mhm.
tax, it's close to 30 million.
Right.
And you're sort of like to me, listen, Dave Dombrowski is going to be a Hall of Fame executive. I'm not
Mhm.
saying but in terms of like made like do I sound like a do I sound disrespectful saying that maybe the current structure of baseball with like all like the luxury tax like different measures and like how teams build out rosters and like analytics that maybe the games just passed them by and they need to maybe bring in someone that's maybe more analytical that's not you know Matt Klentak like
No,
am I
it does feel like some of the decisions that are getting made here are a little
because let me ask you this.
much.
Let's just say let's say the Phillies win 90 games and they like lose in like the wild card round, we'll say, right?
Mhm.
They're gonna clear off money from the books, right?
Yeah.
There's a strong possibility Schwarber might not be a Philly next year.
Which
And
that is not good.
like now you're stuck with some bad contracts still. Like you're gonna have Casty and Walker on like the last year of their contracts and now you're like what are you doing, like buyout territory, are you like what are you going to do, and it's sort of like to me long term like they should focus on spending money on the bullpen, maybe get some more proven veterans or I don't know, make some moves. And like now we basically now are gonna for the first time in a long time, Michael, we're gonna have to like pray that Aiden Miller's gonna be like I don't know, like what's a comp for Aiden Miller, man? Like Dansby Swanson?
Like
Like I don't
Ryan
know.
Braun. Like you hope he's like Ryan Braun. The thing with Aiden Miller, well, the thing with a lot of things is you're seeing the effects of really poor drafting and developing from like 2016 till like 2020. Like you're seeing those effects are hitting you now where you don't have young bats that you feel confident in to like call up and shake things up. You don't where's our Jackson Merrill? Like where's our Jackson Churio even? Like where's you know, there are guys around the league that really make a difference on just being young and a playmaker as an offensive weapon. And you look at all the Phillies failed draft picks and like developmental projects, and it's like the best one you have that's an offensive player. It's like a contest between like Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm, and both of those players are like fine. Boehm's been pretty good the last like 10 games or so. Stott's been pretty good since he moved up into the leadoff spot. But neither of those two players are like good enough to kind of carry your offense or be the sole reason you win a game, you know? Maybe it's the lack of power, maybe it's the lack of whatever, but it's like, Alec Boehm's 6'5" and he's a slap hitter. Bryson Stott is also a slap hitter and it's fine, but the lineup as a whole is just lacking power and you don't have any homegrown power at this moment. And it's just frustrating, you
Well,
know?
you have so, and that's the frustration is because like to me, Michael, I think ultimately, like, and this, I don't know, like, this is like, I have this like pervasive thought
Hmm.
of like, we're going to hear Dombrowski is going to say, he's going to pull a Chuck Fletcher and say, it's really hard to make trades. It's
Ugh,
really hard to make a trade.
I get it, but it's just like the thing. Another thing
How
with
many
the
trades have the
development
Dodgers
stuff,
made the last 3 years, Michael? They've made several trades.
yeah, is that the Phillies. What's the one thing that they've gotten really, really good at the last handful of years? And it's
Developing pitchers.
developing pitchers, developing starting pitchers in particular. They fixed around a few bullpen guys. Jeff Hoffman, Jose Alvarado, Matt Strahm. They kind of turned them into, you know, turned their careers around, whatever. But look in the minor leagues, dude, and we're like, "Oh, dude, maybe Mick Abel actually is going to be good." But holy shit, he's a starting pitcher. They have and Jack Fritz went on this rant the other day, but it's true, is they have so many starters that we need the bullpen help. We really do. You look at the starting rotation, the Phillies starting rotation, I'm not going to complain about it really once, like, it's so good at the moment, and it's deep. And even Taiwan pitched like the best 3 inning outing I've ever seen yesterday, where he was battling through all the crap and he pitched fine. Like, Ranger's going to be back soon. You got Painter, who's coming up later this year. You have like 7 starting pitchers at your disposal that are all within like a 2 month span of being on the major league roster. But the bullpen is terrible. I want to be able to call people up from AAA to be like, okay, I'm calling up
The Iron Pigs have the best
whoever, the
bullpen.
best bullpen in AAA. I want to be able to, I'm not saying we got to throw Mick Abel in the bullpen, but it's like I wish they pivoted and you already moved Seth Johnson to the bullpen. But like Max Lazar, yes, Max Lazar is the closer for the Iron Pigs. And I don't know how much longer we're going to wait before it's like, you know what? Why don't we just call him up? Because we clearly need some right handed reliever help. And if he can come up and sit 96, 97 and get outs in like the 7th inning of a baseball game, and it just takes, we got to relieve some pressure. And I think that not having developed relievers a ton, like homegrown stuff, it's coming back to bite us right now because the bullpen's bad, and we talked about why it's bad. They have really good. Alvarado's been great. Strom's been like pretty great. Kirkering's been like fine. Romano has been terrible, but is seemingly turning it around, and like Ruiz has been bad. And then like that's when you only have 2 guys that you can be like, all right, putting him in, we're not giving up runs. You're gonna kill them. You're gonna kill their arms by the time it's September, and we need them to really be rearing to go. And I just fear that we're not going to have a solution to it until like the deadline, and that's just a long time from now until the trade deadline to like float around while not having a fully stocked out bullpen. Like that's the biggest issue, is that I don't love the philosophy of anything being like, okay, this is good enough for the first half of the year. We'll address the issues at the deadline. And that's exactly what they did with the bullpen. They built the bullpen by just signing Romano, letting Estevez and Hoffman walk. And their plan was, okay, what we have is going to be good enough for August or for April until July. And then when July rolls around, we're going to see where we need to patch up, and we'll be able to add at the trade deadline and really push the bullpen into a good spot. And the issue is that they were wrong. It's not good enough for now until July. It's going to kill them. It's going to tank them. You have the best rotation in baseball, and you've been struggling mightily, not only because of the offense, but because your bullpen can't hold leads or can't keep games close before you do take the lead or something like that. Like they come in because you're stretching your starter longer than you want to, like you did with Nola the other day against the Mets, and then you give up the 3-run home run to Lindor because Ruiz grooves a fastball down the middle. It's like, dude, I need you to get outs and get Nola out of that. And all of a sudden, we're like, you know what? That was a pretty encouraging Nola outing. He went 6 in the third, gave up 2 runs, 2 homers, but shit, it was only 2 runs. But now it's 4 because he gave up the home run to Lindor. And it's just, I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
I think just to wrap up the pitch, we could talk about Nola for a moment.
Yeah,
I'm going to say this about with Aaron Nola right now is that the lack of velocity is concerning to
it
me.
is. The velocity, I
And
think,
but I'm
actually
going to tell you
saw
why it's concerning
slight
because, like,
tick.
well, I have two reasons why. One, Michael, if Aaron Nola's velocity is like this, like 20 years ago, no one would care. He'd still be an incredibly effective pitcher. The
Hmm.
issue is right, like, how many good pitchers are there that throw 90, 91 miles an hour as starting pitchers?
John, there's not many.
Yes, that exactly. But here's
You know
Nola's
what?
issue.
There's
This is where I'm
these
frustrated a
stats
little bit.
exist. We can look this up. I'm honestly intrigued to just see percentile on fastball velocity.
Like the Japanese pitcher from Baltimore throws low
Eighth
velo,
percentile. It's not great, John.
and then they asked Topper, and he's like, "Oh, it's the weather," and I'm like, "Bro, like that's like no, that's like come on, man."
Like, I
Like
know his velocity ticks up when it gets warmer, but he shouldn't be sitting 90,
like
you
like
know,
when
like
I heard like Aaron, I heard like Larry Anderson brought up, he was like, like you're not really helping Nola out by not pitching him in the in spring training where his arm's not warmed up. And if he's going to go out there and get slapped around, you're hurting his confidence. Like,
right. It's just the thing with Nola is that your rotation otherwise is good enough that it's like
you can
you can
wait
deal with
for
it.
it. My
Yeah, you can
concern,
just deal with it.
and I think Nola's issue right now, he loves to throw strikes. When you're throwing like flat 90s fastballs, that's why he's giving up so many home runs.
No, for sure. Nola has always been a guy that relies on, you know, good command and his stuff. And it's just like, to get swings and misses, to be able to pinpoint on the corners, all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, his stuff is not as good as it used to be. And that just comes with age, that just happens. His stuff isn't as good. So when your stuff's not as good, what do you really, as a low velocity guy already, and your stuff got worse, your fastball's slower, your curveball's got a little bit less bite, you really need to rely on command. Your command needs to be essentially perfect in order to have like a really good outing. And when Nola misses and the command issues come up, it never was walks. He's never been a guy that walks a ton of guys. He's walking more guys this year than he ever has, but he's never been a walk guy. So when his command is lacking, what happens? It's the two-seamer that runs right down the middle, right over the heart of the plate, gets crushed. It's the curveball or the changeup that hangs a little bit and it gets smacked. Like he's just gonna like I'm not saying, oh, he's gonna give up a home run every start, but like he just might, and that's terrible.
Well, he's a head case. Like you saw how much he struggled when the pitch clock was distracting
And
him.
he truly has never fully adjusted to the clock. He just has not. He really hasn't.
Like
It's been
that's
3
I'm
we're
sorry, that's a lame ass excuse. Every pitcher has
it's
to
not
deal with
ex
that.
it's not even it's just what it is. Like, it's not like, "Oh, blame the pitch clock for why he's bad," but it's like, it's just a fact at this point that he never seemed adjusted to it. And, like, he's a guy that loved to take a nice stroll around the mound if things were in a tight spot so he could, catch his breath, whatever, gather himself like he needs to. And you see how he works around it now, where he does take the long walk around the mound. Then he gets on the mound at like 5 seconds, and then he steps off at like 1 second just to give himself some more time. And it's like, that's fine. You got to work around how you got to work around it. But he just doesn't ever look comfortable for an extended period of time for a start, and it's a shame. I think the biggest thing is I really need to see his velocity get up. It was definitely up a bit in his Mets start. I think, honestly, it might be worth it to have him push his arm a little bit to get higher velocity and sacrifice some of the length into the games. And I understand it seems counterintuitive with how bad the bullpen is right now, but if I can just get Nola to give me, like, 5 innings where his fastball can sit at, like, 92 instead of 90, I think I would trade that for him pacing himself because he wants to throw 7, and we're in the 4th inning, and his fastball's sitting at, like, 89. I'm like, "Dude, it's so scary every time he's up there." And listen, he's pitching tomorrow in Chicago. Thank God tomorrow is actually supposed to be these first 2 games of the series are damn cold, but tomorrow's actually supposed to warm up a little bit. Thank God. But this Cubs lineup is terrifying for me, especially for a guy like Nola. It's just some big lefties in there, some big bats in there. I'm definitely a little concerned, but I really need a good start out of him. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Christopher Sanchez, forearm soreness. Not ideal, and they didn't give him an MRI, which I guess that's encouraging, but, like, you couldn't have just given him the
I
MRI
don't think they
just to
want to know
see?
what's in the MRI. Sounds like to
Oh,
me.
Jesus Christ, so what? He's gonna skip a start and then his arm's gonna fall off for the next start? Like, I'm terrified. I'm genuinely worried about
Yeah,
Christopher
when that
Sanchez.
happened, I'm like, bruh, I'm like, dude, like, I was like,
Yeah,
like it's like bad to worse.
yeah.
I'll
The
just say
Giants
this.
just drafted Cam Skattebo, the Arizona State running back.
Oh,
Anyways,
what? Well, how many picks till the Eagles pick?
uh I think if they stay at where they're at, like 7, maybe. Regardless, Sanchez, Sanchez, I hope he's all right.
Most
I wouldn't
devastating
mind skipping a
change up
start.
in baseball,
Yeah, I wouldn't mind giving him a skip start. Um,
especially if you call up Rangers soon. Like, skip his start and have Rangers start it.
well, Ranger, I think is gonna get one more AAA start. It would be like skip a start and like call up Abel for like an outing. I'd be totally down for that, just to give Mick Abel 1 run, see how he looks, and then send it back
Abel,
down. No
well,
big
guess what?
deal.
Abel might be a middle reliever just because they need, like you said, they need a bullpen.
That's my point, but it's we'll see how it goes. The lineup is just powerless, and that's kind of all you need to say about it. Like, the approach has gotten worse as time has
Can
gone on. They've been chasing a little more, but
yeah,
overall,
yeah, they just they don't know how to hit with men in scoring position. They can't hit with two strikes.
well, you want to hear something that's absurd? The Mets series, or on their over their 4-game losing streak, entering yesterday, they were hitting 357 with runners in scoring position. But the issue is that it's all effing singles. So you got a runner on second who's slow as molasses probably because it's either Bohm or Schwarber or Castellanos or whatever, and then you get a single and they can't score. So it's like they're actually kind of hitting with runners in scoring position. They're just not driving the ball with runners in scoring position. They're not hitting a ball to the wall. They're not hitting home runs. They're just hitting flat singles, infield singles, ground ball singles through the hole that they can't score runs on because
It's
they're
not even
not
just trying to hit
driving the
home runs.
ball.
Like your point, like just hit the ball to the gap, get
They're
it
not they're
past the
not hitting extra
outfielder.
base hits. Trey Turner, we're a little while along now where his on base percentage has been higher than his slugging percentage because he's just not hitting any extra base hits. You only have 2 guys with more than 2 home runs on the season, and I think it's what Schwarber and Bryce. You don't have any guys that come up there that are like, all right, this is a legitimate home run threat other than those 2 guys. Like everyone else, I just don't feel
Can I? Can,
confident in that they're
I
going to
have a
ever hit a home
take.
run.
I have a take that no one said about maybe overall of the hitters, but mainly like the daycare guys. Do you know who the only two players that really worked hard this past off season to actually like bulk up for the Phillies? Like they just when I say bulk up, I mean like they were like we need to put on more muscle, drive the ball, put in extra work besides what I normally do, and then what we do in spring training. It was Kyle Schwarber and Johan Rojas.
Listen, Rojas entering yesterday, hitting 500 with runners in scoring position,
That's
7 of
my
14.
point. It's my
Yeah,
point. It's like you like. I mean, like
hit the
God,
ball hard on the
are
ground.
we
Willie
gonna
Mays.
Michael? Are we gonna have to? Are we gonna have to say this take, Michael? Is it time to say this yet? The Phillies have too many like frat boy dudes on their team.
Oh, dude, I've been saying this for years. They need some guys that came from struggle, man. They need some guys that are gonna want to work and can handle adversity because it's all about the vibes and like, did the fans bully them from pouring water on each other's heads? Like, kinda. A lot of people complained about it, so they stopped doing it. And I listen, I totally respect the business-like approach, this is serious, whatever. But the problem with that idea is, 1, it's just really hard to do in baseball. Like, it's such a long season, and there's so much
Well,
bad that goes
well,
on.
well, here's the thing though. Business like approach. Alec, you said Alec Boehm is 6'5", but he hits like someone who's 5'6".
Yes.
Brandon
Business
Marsh,
like
Brandon Marsh, sucks. He can't hit.
Yeah, we'll see
He
how he does in
and
his
the,
AAA.
and you have like and then Bryson Stott's coming around, but like Bryson Stott was injured, so he couldn't work out last year. So he has he had has a
But
legit.
he's also just not gonna be a guy that's gonna drive the hell out of a baseball. Like, that's just not his game, and it shouldn't be his game, that's not who
Right,
he
but
is.
now it's sort of like too we got Johan Rojas is like fucking hitting the weights like crazy, and
Mhm,
like he's the guy that gets the most hate. I feel like a lot of the
mhm.
time,
Yeah, when
and
he yeah, it's
when I
just
mentioned Schwarber lost weight last year. It hurt his power, and he put more muscle on.
mhm.
So now he looks he truly looks like a linebacker. Like he almost looks like he could play pro football
Yeah,
almost.
he's a big body. He's a big body for sure.
Yes, and like, are we gonna call out Bryce for the raw milk? And he just looks like amazing. Not almost not like I don't know, like not emaciated, but like, dude, like when we like the Phillies signed Bryce Harper to hit 40 home runs.
Yeah, like Bryce might hit around 300, but I need it to be with, like, 35 home runs, not 25. Like,
Yeah,
that's
we
just
didn't
it's
sign
not
Bryce
enough.
Harper to beat Jason Worth.
No. No, we didn't. They need more power, and, like, you're not really gonna get that from adding a player at this point. You just kinda need
Are they gonna pander and get Reese if Reese like struggles? Like, how's Reese
they
Hoskins? How's our friend Reese doing? He's hitting 297 with 3 home runs and 12 RBI. So if he was on the Phillies,
so
we'd
he's
bitch.
not hitting he'd fit
We,
in perfectly because he's not hitting from effing power.
we'd be we'd be bitching.
You bitching that Reese turned into a slap hitter. It's like, what the hell happened?
All right, so conspiracy take dinger because there's so many dinger boosts. Home runs are down in Major League Baseball this year, and the Phillies are a victim of that now.
No, it's just the Philly it's so crazy, so funny how the Phillies so quickly went from like, "Oh, all they do is hit home runs, and they don't lose a small ball," and all that sort and now it's like, if they don't hit home runs, it's fucking pulling teeth, man. It's like all they do is slap singles, and it's like, I need the
Yeah,
home
but look
run.
at the
I
Mets
need the
last year. Like you said, passing the baton. Like let's who like the Mets power guys was Alonso, I guess Lindor, like
What,
Winker,
last year? I mean,
JD Martinez.
Vientos had, like, 30 homers or whatever. The thing is, though, you look at I don't know, like, Pete Alonso's just smoking the ball everywhere. You need someone and it doesn't listen, when Schwarber and Harper are struggling, like, you're just almost never going to win. It's very difficult to win if those guys aren't hitting well, and Schwarber's definitely been of a bit of a rut after, his early season hot streak. I don't know what they need. They need a shakeup of some sort. I don't know what that entails, if that entails, like, a Otto Kemp call up, Justin Crawford call up. I don't think that's
Hey, if
I
you
don't
want to
know.
know someone that came up with struggle, Otto Kemp had like 3 serious injuries in college, and he
Yeah.
went undrafted. He went
Listen, man,
undrafted, Michael. You know how hard it is to not get drafted in baseball
and
if
still
you're a baseball
yeah.
player. There's football players being taken before him.
Yeah, so, we will be seeing, listen, we complained, that's all we did about the Phillies. All this to say that, like, I do think they're still a good team. They are still a good team, they're still gonna win, I think, right around 90 games. Maybe they won't win the division if the Mets stay hot. I don't know. They have things that they need to address, like, they have serious issues like the bullpen. I do think the lineup will eventually kinda just work itself out and be fine. I kinda think the batting order that they have at this point is pretty solid. I would love for my leadoff hitter to have a little bit more pop than Stott. but ideally, if you really want Schwarber behind Harper, which seems like the only reasonable solution you could have at this point for true protection of Bryce is by putting Schwarber back there. Ideally, it would be Trey Turner's your leadoff guy because he has home run threat, but he doesn't really have home run threat, and he's just not hitting well at all. So it's Stott, and Stott's been doing pretty good at it in a traditional leadoff sense. It does suck that you virtually have no power threat out of that spot, but it is what it is. He's been getting on base, he's been setting the table. Your next three behind him have been struggling, so that's a big reason why you're not scoring runs. Turner, Harper, and Schwarber haven't been able to get him around. So we'll see. I think they'll be fine as a
I'm trying to
whole, but
see. I'm
we
trying.
will be
I'm
seeing.
going to check the NFL draft because I do feel like the Eagles should be picking soon because they pick 111.
Uh, let's take a look. We're in the uh, why you're a draft cast? Is that what this is?
The
Oh,
Eagles.
the Eagles are on the clock.
Do you want to just close out the show with who they pick, and then we'll just.
Yeah, yeah. Let's give it a gander. So the
So who's
Jets.
available at the pick, Michael?
Um, well, best player available is Shador Sanders.
Okay,
Um,
that's been listed a lot.
there's receivers available. There's some D tackles available. There's a tight end available. I don't know how good Gunnar Helm is, but um, we will. I guess we'll see. The Jets pick announced yet? The pick is in, but it hasn't been announced. Buffalo made their pick. Yeah, I think we're just waiting around. I don't know. Do you want to see him take a receiver in this spot?
They didn't pick up
Seems
Jahan
like
Dotson's fifth-year option, so it does kind of lead me to believe that
they want somebody, right?
maybe.
Um, I mean, you drafting a tight end, and not if the tight end's like you don't believe in him. I mean, the pick's in. How long? This really does take a while, especially when you're in a situation like
Sean
this.
Payne is legitimately perplexed by Shadur Sanders not getting drafted yet. Says it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, what did he say? Like, beware?
I don't-
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Man, we might be a little bit. They're in commercials. They're showing Hulu commercials.
Let's see if I can find the leak. Eagles draft pick.
I don't even know if the pick's gonna be in because the Jets pick's in, but not announced.
Jack Sawyer.
No, I do not want Jack Sawyer. He is built like Devonta Smith, but is an edge rusher. That's not ideal to me. Um, I can't believe that hasn't been announced. All right, I don't know how long this is gonna take.
The
God
Jets
forbid the
just took
trade bad.
Arian Smith.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like this should be like rapid fire.
It should be, but it might not be. The Eagles draft Nebraska defensive tackle Ty Robinson. There you go. Jeff McClain. Ty Robinson
Was
is the
he?
fourth.
Where was he projected to go? Ty Robinson.
He is 23 years old. He is, I don't know. Mhm.
He was among the best available players, so it doesn't sound like it was a reach.
Ref
Oh,
weight 3.
Ty
Who's projected to go
Robinson
in the
had a
fifth?
9.89 relative athletic score, Michael. What a shock.
Shocker.
What a
Yeah. So,
shocker.
so that'll close out our show. The Eagles
That'll
taking
close
a
out this show. Thank you,
freakish
everybody.
athletic defensive tackle.
Yeah.
So,
See
all right.
everybody.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Phillies Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.